Hey folks, Nathan P. Butler here. I am back with another in our series of content overview videos for the game Final Girl from Ryder Games. This is the third in that series of videos. In a moment we will note what is in the other two so you know what to expect in this one. There have been two different Kickstarters for Final Girl. There is a third one on the way sometime in 2023, they say, and based on what they have confirmed in the comments from the second Kickstarter, it will include feature film boxes inspired by at least Saw and Terminator, but they haven't confirmed any others, so at least three probably are still up in the air along with the vignette for this upcoming Series 3. But the first two Kickstarters were focused on Series 1 and Series 2. The first Kickstarter, of course, was Series 1. That's this content here, though the storage box was not part of that original Kickstarter. It was basically the original feature film boxes, the core box, some miniatures and so forth, game mats and whatnot. We covered everything from Series 1 that was from the first Kickstarter back in the first of these three content overview videos. So if you want to see something about, oh, Hans, or the Poltergeist, or Creech Manor, or the Sacred Groves, or whatever from Series 1 from that original Kickstarter, see the first of these videos linked in the description. I will not be going over that content again here. Then they had the second Kickstarter, and the second Kickstarter was primarily focused on Series 2, which is what was just showing here in its storage box a moment ago. However, in working on Series 2, they also came up with ideas for things like vehicle miniatures or storage boxes and whatnot for Series 1. So in the Series 2 Kickstarter, there were actually some new Series 1 items, like this box here to store everything. Now the second Kickstarter had two-wave shipping available. That first wave of shipping included, as you would expect, reprints of all the stuff from Series 1 that just didn't need to be developed anymore. It just needed to be reprinted and shipped back out. But they also had some things, as I mentioned, in that Kickstarter from Series 1, and most of that shipped in Wave 1, with the exception of some new miniatures that were still in production at the time that needed to wait for Wave 2. I covered all of the second Kickstarter's Wave 1 content, again, primarily for Series 1, back in the second of these content overview videos, again, linked in the description. Now, however, Wave 2 of the second Kickstarter has arrived, with all the stuff for Series 2 and a couple of remaining items for Series 1, including some stretch goals that can be used in either series. That is what this content overview video is all about. So if you want to see stuff from the feature films from the first series, see the first video. That's also where you'll see things like the miniatures for the Final Girls and for the killers for that, the original mystery box, and so on. If you want to see stuff from Wave 1 of the second Kickstarter, focused on Series 1, see the second video. That's the storage box, the gruesome death books in print, and that sort of thing. This video is focused entirely on Wave 2 of the second Kickstarter, so the bulk of it will be focused on Series 2. However, we're going to start by looking at the items that carry over for Series 1 that just needed more time in production that were part of Wave 2 instead of Wave 1. Yes, I know that can be confusing. The key thing here is if you want to see everything for Final Girl, watch all three videos. And yes, I will continue and do another one when we get Series 3 eventually. The only new things for Series 1 that had to wait until the second wave of shipping for the second Kickstarter were these two packages right here. The Series 1 vehicle miniatures and the Terror from Above miniatures. Kind of a small box here for the Series 1 vehicle minis. It tells you on the back which goes with which. We're going to look at them as we go along here, the actual miniatures, not just the box here. And it is a nice package as far as protecting them. I will say you won't be using this if you have any of the storage solutions or even the feature film boxes, but they did come in a nice little container here. And the cover does pop on and off. Nicely put together. They should be pretty well protected during the journey, or if you're storing them in this, though you're not likely to. Before we look at the actual miniatures, let's note here there's also the Terror from Above miniatures. These are bird minis to go along with the Terror from Above vignette from Series 1. There are three different sculpts here that we'll look at, single bird and triple bird minis. And again, packaging-wise, when they're shipped, or if you're storing them here, lots of spaces for them, but a similar nice kind of snap-on tray. I doubt you'll use it, but it's there. Now I would note here that in the Series 1 Vehicle Minis box, you'll note that all the vehicles have to do with specific locations, not killers, which makes sense because you'll need them to navigate specific terrain, specific situations, depending on a particular map. For Camp Happy Trails from the Happy Trails Horror, you might be playing and get the item for the motorboat keys. which would typically use a motorboat token, only now, in the minis box, you actually have a little teeny tiny motorboat. And I would note here, by the way, that the way you're expected to store these is to put them into the location side of the feature film box. There's no other place to store them, but this fits very well, and you'll always use it with the same location, so just use one of those wells there. If you are playing with Creech Manor from The Haunting of Creech Manor, you might wind up pulling the Helicopter Rescue event card, which would normally have a helicopter token, only now there is a teeny tiny helicopter mini. It's a little fragile looking, but feels pretty sturdy relative to how thin it is, so not terribly worried about bending it, but I'd still be careful. If you're playing with the Carnival of Blood from Carnage at the Carnival, you might come across the Employee Transport event, which would then give you the golf cart token. However, now we have a nice little golf cart mini. And finally, if you're playing with Maple Lane from Frightmare on Maple Lane, there's actually 2 different situations that could result in tokens that are now replaced by minis in that Series 1 vehicle miniature box. You have Officer Cop. I really enjoy that particular event. Previously, just a little police car token. Now, it's a little teeny tiny police car. Then from the item deck, you might get the bicycle, which was previously just represented by the little puke green token there, but now also has a mini. Obviously, the bicycle and the cop car are not to scale. And because someone will surely ask, no, there are no vehicles at all for the Sacred Groves from Slaughter in the Groves. So this little box here, again with 5 new minis spread across 4 of the films, but not useful if the only Series 1 film you've got is the Slaughter in the Groves one, was part of the Series 1 franchise pledge, which was $159 and included, tons of stuff that I've talked about before from Series 1 when we detailed those pledges in a previous video. You can also get it separately for $10, or it was part of the full franchise pledge that was everything available except the mystery boxes, the Paula promo, and the Gruesome Death books for both series for $299, or the Epic All-In that was all of that together, including the stuff I just mentioned was not included in the full franchise. That was $329. There was also a Series 2 collection booster, which was basically anything that was new, pretty much, which was the Series 2 franchise pledge, which we'll talk about later, plus all the new stuff for Series 1, which would be the vehicle minis and the storage box, which was a $165 pledge. The bird miniatures we're going to look at here, though, these actually were a stretch goal. They were one of the final stretch goals of the campaign at the $1,900,000 mark for the campaign. Now, not everybody necessarily got them. It had to do with what you had pledged before, if you got them from the previous campaign, blah, blah, blah. There's a pledge tool that you can see on the Kickstarter to tell you which pledges came with what in a little bit more detail, especially with the stretch goals. But basically, this was a freebie in order to add minis to the one scenario that didn't have any minis at all, which was the Terror from Above vignette. As we look at these, let's note where you would store them. If you have the storage box, you're going to have the cast and crew box for Series 1. That is where you're going to have all of your Final Girl miniatures. That's where you've got the special item cards from their secret envelopes. That's where you've got the individual Final Girl cards. And that is where you would have your Terror from Above vignette in the box, presumably, or just sleeved by itself, or whatever, here in this well. This well over here has enough space for all of the bird tokens from the original, plus all the bird minis that we're going to look at here. And yes, that was the plan all along when designing this. You can see it on the guide to what goes where. The vignette actually comes with 36 tokens that show 1 bird on one side, 3 on the other. We talked about how that actually works in the first video in this series, but 36 of these tokens. The minis box comes with 36 total minis, but it's 24 single birds and 12 triple birds. The triple birds look like this. The in-flight or wings-up version of the single bird looks like this. Then you got a teeny tiny single bird that looks like this. I would note, by the way, that it's not an even number. It's 12 of the 3 bird ones, But for the 24 single bird ones, it's actually 8 with the wings out and 16 without, possibly because of the space necessary to actually fit them into the box. Now, those were the only new things for Series 1 that were part of Wave 2. Again, if you want to see anything else from Series 1 that was from the original Kickstarter, check out the first video. Anything from Wave 1 of the second Kickstarter, check out the second video. But that's all for this one when it comes to Series 1. Now we move to Series 2, all the completely brand new stuff, not even related to old stuff, that you could get in that Kickstarter. Very quickly, let's go over the relevant pledge levels, including Series 2 material. You could do the a la carte, which was one feature film box for $20, but no core box. You could do the film debut, which is one feature film box and a core box, in case you were just starting out and you wanted to be able to play one film. That was $40. There were the Series 2 feature films, which were the 5 feature film boxes, but no core box or anything else, for $90. There was a Series 2 franchise pledge for $159, the same cost as the Series 1 franchise that I've mentioned in a previous video here. That included the core box, all 5 Series 2 feature films, the Series 2 miniatures for Killers and Final Girls, and the pack for vehicles, plus the game mats, plus the storage box. Then you had a Series 2 collection booster, which is what I did, which is $165, which is basically the Series 2 franchise, but with no core box, but adding in the Season 1 or Series 1 storage box and vehicle pack. Then you had a gameplay all-in. That was the core box, feature films 1 through 10, so both series, Terror from Above and the lore and scenario book for Series 1. That was $209. For $299, it was the full franchise, which I think I previously mentioned. It's basically everything except for the Series 1 and Series 2 mystery boxes, the Paula promo card, and the Series 1 gruesome death books in print form, and the Epic All-In. That was everything. The full franchise was $299. The Epic All-In was $329. So let's dig into it. This is one of the configurations for Final Girl Series 2's storage box. The least common configuration would just be the storage box, right? So that's going to have the Series 2 cast and crew box, the Series 2 bonus features box, the empty VCR box, but that was it. No box of props, because that would be sent separately, no core box or anything like that. Very similar to what you would see with the regular storage box option from Series 1. It's for those who already owned stuff, but that's more for people getting this later. Then you have the Series 2 franchise box from that franchise pledge. That is not this either. That would have the game mat bundle in the game mat boxes, the cast crew box and bonus features box. It would have all 5 of the feature films, but it would have a core box in it. The box of props, which we will see, would come separately. This is what was basically created for those who were coming back after Series 1 to get everything from the new series. This is a so-called Series 2 booster box configuration. Pretty much exactly the same thing as what you would have gotten for that franchise box, the difference being, as it notes here, there's no core box in here, and instead of the box of props, which is basically a stretch goals box, being provided separately, it's actually in the box itself where the core box would otherwise go. So, depending on how you get this, make sure you're keeping an eye on which version of it is. It may be mostly empty and just storage. It may include feature films and a core box. It may include feature films and the box of props. It really depends. The only indicator would be just a difference over here, I believe. So let's see what we got here. We got our killers across the top, as we will be seeing. We have our final girls down here across the bottom. Notice there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So this is a set of the final girls who are in the feature film boxes and the vignette, but not promo final girls. Just like the previous one didn't have Paula on it, which is the only promo at the time. You have your little awards box here. Best Solo Game Winner, 15th Annual Gaming Awards. Kickstarter Most Funded Solo Game of All Time. We'll come back to that. The Golden Meeple for 2021 from Board Game Revolution. Quackalope, 5 out of 5. Golden Geek, 2021. Man vs. Meeple, Top Solo Games. And then this one that I always tend to forget, the Meeple Mountain Best Solo Game for 2021. So kind of the accolades of the original game. Final Girls Series 2. Then this indicator, again, very important to keep an eye on which one this has. This is the booster box, which reads, important, this special Series 2 booster box includes the box of props. It does not contain a Final Girl core box pictured here, which is needed to play the game. Ryder Games, 1 player, 20 to 60 minutes, ages 14 plus, a solo game of survival horror by AJ Porfirio and Evan Derrick, additional design by Mike Martins, and Julie Aaron, with art from Tyler Johnson, Roland McDonald, which I swear in the last one I think I mispronounced as Ronald McDonald, but you can see why, it's close, Vladislava Ladkova, and Heather Vaughn. The back of this, by the way, just like last time, is a guide to how to organize your stuff. We're not going to go into it in detail because we looked at it last time for Series 1. It is effectively the same. But basically it tells you how to organize it, lets you know which items are optional purchases that are not included in the box, and where to put everything when laying out the box. A really nice guide, don't throw it out. You take that off and you've got the artwork here for just the plain cover for when it's on your shelves. For what it's worth, by the way, the art was sort of a stretch goal at the $500,000 mark, where the boxes got their own individual art, and the art actually carries over from box to box. If you sit the first box aside this one, which we don't have space for here, you would see a continuous image. Same thing if you put the sides side by side. It's basically just the background trees that are a continuous image, but it's nice to see them sitting on the shelf if you put Series 1 before Series 2. Kinda cool. The bottom here says Final Girl Series 2, lists the locations that we're going to see, lists the killers we're going to see, and on the killer side also notes the vignette. Just like last time, the vignette doesn't say, it's birds, or in this case, it's zombies. It just gives the name of that one. Then you have your killer side of the box there with the big bad wolf. Then your Final Girl side of the box with Red. Both of those are from Once Upon a Full Moon, the feature film. Top of the box, Final Girl Series 2, a solo game of survival horror by AJ Porfirio and Evan Derrick, Van Ryder Games, and then the information that we saw on the front bottom left corner. The back of the box, similar to Series 1, we have that image of the 5 feature films, plus the game essentially in play right there, using the new playmats that we're going to see momentarily and compare it to Series 1, because people keep asking about that. Up here in the corner, Final Girl Series 2, even more horror awaits. This massive box includes the Series 2 collection of feature film boxes for the critically acclaimed solo game Final Girl. Mix and match killers and locations, and with various event, item, and tarot cards, no two games will ever be the same. Choose your favorite Final Girl and instantly become the star of your own horror movie. Then we have all those awards again. Optional Series 2 items available separately. The following items will fit inside your storage box, but are not included. They may be purchased separately from your retailer or through our website at vanrydergames.com, which, by the way, is the best place to get this stuff shortly after Kickstarter fulfillment, which is ongoing as of the time I'm recording this in mid-March 2023. Those items include the vignette film Terror from the Grave, Series 2 Miniatures Pack, Series 2 Vehicle Pack, Terror from the Grave Zombie Miniatures Pack, or Zombies, plural, Miniatures Pack, box of props, if this box came with a core box, Series 2 Gruesome Death books coming soon. The reason it says coming soon is that these are digital to start with, just like with Series 1. Series 1 had Gruesome Death books for each location that gave you all kinds of different little narrative bits to read when there was a death based on certain circumstances. Those were all created after Kickstarter fulfillment, when everything was sort of finished up. It took a long time to write them. Those were released digitally as a stretch goal from Series 1 shortly after Series 1 fulfillment. Still with me? Then in the Series 2 Kickstarter, they offered those as physical printed books, which we saw in the last of these videos. Again, the ones for Series 2 are a digital stretch goal. They were the stretch goal at the $1 million mark. They'll be digital here, they'll be released soon, but have not been released yet, and in the Series 3 Kickstarter, we are being told we'll be able to purchase physical copies of those. There will always be a one Kickstarter, one series lag, I guess you could say, for the Gruesome Death books because of how long it takes to create them. Hence, coming soon. There's a space to put them. It's marked that way, but there are no physical versions yet. Van Ryder Games, same stuff about the stats. Note, contents listed above may vary or not be included if this box was received as part of our Kickstarter campaign fulfillment. Legalese and whatnot down here. UPC, warning, Van Ryder Games, and then this part here, included in this box. This box includes many products in the Final Girl line, each of which comes with its own set of components. Only the products themselves are listed below. Their specific individual components are not listed. Box of props or Final Girl core box. See cover sheet. Again, what I was saying about this could be the franchise box or the booster box. The feature films, Into the Void, Panic at Station 2891, or 2891, however you're supposed to say that, Once Upon a Full Moon, A Knock at the Door, feature film Madness in the Dark, that's the last one there. Then we have the Series 2 Cast and Crew box, which is not pictured up there. Series 2 Bonus Features box, not pictured up there. The Series 2 Game Mat set. And then there are optional miniatures, does not include miniatures. Ask your retailer for the Series 2 miniature pack add-on or visit us at vanrydergames.com to learn more. So very much like what we saw with the Series 1 box design. Let's open this bad boy. You notice here the organization inside the box is again similar to Series 1. You have a VCR style box up here for the game mats. That art was a stretch goal. So, as I said, they were the most funded Kickstarter solo-only game. The original holder of that title was Unbroken. Lots of horror stories behind Unbroken that have nothing to do with the game and all to do with fulfillment and the publisher and that sort of thing. They broke that record with the Series 1 Kickstarter. But then, Hoplomachus Victorum from Chip Theory Games beat their record. Then in the second Kickstarter, they retook the crown. The art for the boxes having that VCR style look to it was the stretch goal at $944,328 when they retook the crown. Then down here, you got the box of props, which is essentially stretch goals from this campaign, which again could be separate, could be in there, depends on what type of pledge you had. An extra can also be purchased separately for $25. Then you get the 5 feature film boxes. We just named them when looking at the back. We're going to look at them all in detail in a moment, plus the Series 2 cast and crew box and the bonus features box. So aside from the box of props here, which in the original box for Series 1 had the core box in it, or in a franchise box has the core box in it, that's where your box of props goes to fill in that extra space. So you didn't need a second core box. That said, you're not going to have a whole lot of stuff in this once you actually distribute what's in it. So you might want to get a second box of props and a second core box, combine them together, which is primarily what you do with them, and then stick another core box in here. I think that's actually what I'm going to be doing once they become available for purchase on the Van Ryder Games website later. So let's start with the game mats, because one of the big questions has been, how do the game mats compare between Series 1 and Series 2? Which one should I use? Are they compatible with each other? Yes, they are. There are some differences though. So this is the box, darker color scheme than what you saw on Series 1. It's a little hard to see there because I've got it under the lights here, but it's a much darker gray even than it looks like here in this light. Final Girl Series 2 game mat set. The VCR on one side with the bloody fingerprint there. Series 2. The back. Series 2 game mat set includes 2 28 by 12 inch deluxe neoprene game mats to enhance your Final Girl experience. Final Girl, Legalese, Van Ryder Games, UPC. The other side is just kind of a continuation of that same design, same thing on the other sides there. As before, it is 2 mats, hence mat set, that are rolled together in the box. It makes it a lot easier to store than if there was one giant mat, which I really appreciate. As with Series 1, you will lay these out together, like so. We're going to have this as our background, and we're going to look at these individually and make the comparison to Series 1, just because that way I'm not having to carry the freaking iPad the entire time and jostle and make anybody sick. So it's going to be your bottom mat. This is essentially the player's area, so to speak, the Final Girls area for the most part here. So you have your horror track up here, right? So you've got from what is basically 0 up to what is basically 7, basically the end points with the 1 through 6. You have your images denoting whether it's 3, 2, or 1 die/dice that you get to roll. You got your time track with extreme horror mode noted here with starting at 5. You also, you'll notice there have that kind of weird other ring going around it. That is the extreme horror mode ring, right? So you have 2 ways it's noted here, just like on the playmats for Series 1. You have a space for your Final Girls health tokens and final health token. That final health token part, there's not like an indication or anything, it's just that curved edge of the track. A place for the Final Girl card, unused health tokens at the time, your play area, so that as you play cards, this is where they go, so they have a place to sit, so you don't accidentally put them back into the tableau too early. Spaces to put your dice when not in use. The items in your hand, left, right, or both. Place for items in your backpack. You're not limited to 4, but there's 4 spaces there for you. A place to put the dead victims, and a reminder that every time a victim dies, bloodlust increases by 1. A place for your terror deck, and the active terror card. Notice it's not a discard. The idea is that as you pull a card off the terror deck, you put it face up there on the active terror card stack, and whatever one is face up is the one you're doing, and you just wait to the next turn and then flip the next one over. You then have your tableau here, a place for your 0 cost action cards when you're getting those back, a place for your regular cards that are found in the core box, your regular action cards, but then some feature film boxes, like say, Slaughter in the Groves, where you need the atonement cards, will have special action cards. Those now have a place to be put on the end of the tableau there when you're playing. Now, for comparison purposes, these are the Series 1 mats. Notice these are from the second Kickstarter because they have the correct images of the dice. They're from Final Girl, not Hostage Negotiator, but they are otherwise identical from the first Kickstarter. They just had the error with the dice images here. You notice that the horror track and everything else is much, much larger over here, as is the place for the health tokens. The Final Girl has her space underneath. You have your place for your health tokens, your play area, your tableau. The tableau does not have a space for special action cards at all. The items in hand and backpack are essentially the same. You have your dead spot over there for the dead victims. The space for the terror deck is not on the player's mat for Series 1. It's actually on the killer side, which we'll take a look at. You notice there's also a space on this one for tokens, in case you have any tokens that might be used in that scenario, but maybe not in play at the time, like the boat token, perhaps. There's also, since I didn't mention it, yes, a place to put your dice. Then this is going to be your Series 2 killer side, or film box side, whatever you want to call it here. So you have a place for your killer board again. You're not going to have a separate place to put the health tokens or anything like that for the killer, because that's already on the board. You don't really need the extra space for it. And notice here, in case you're playing with the vignette, there's a space for the killer board to take up this entire space, but if you're playing with the vignette, you're not going to have a board, so you have a place to put your finale, your dark power, your bloodlust track, in both cases here, which is kind of a nice way to do that. You also have your location board space, as before, a place for your items up top. Notice that it has 4 item decks up there, 1, 2, 3, and 1 marked as bonus item deck. That's for something like Maple Lane, where there's 4 different item decks rather than 3. You have a space for your victim pool and spots to put the 3 different colored special victim meeples up there. A place for 3 minor dark powers. Over here, your feature film may have special cards. They may be regular sized, they may be tarot sized. Those have spaces now that weren't on the Series 1 mats at all. You also might have a special board of some kind off to the side. That is also given a space over here. Then on your far right-hand side, you have Final Girl, a place for your setup card, the event deck, your starting event to remind you that you're going to have one to start with, and then 4 other events, though there's no limit on how many of those can come out, but you'd be really hard-pressed to see a game in which there were more than 4 all active at the same time. And you notice some of these have these little asterisk-looking symbol. See it up here? Additional components that may not be present in all games. Now let's compare this to Series 1. Series 1 lacks the spaces for any kind of like special cards or anything to go with the killer, just has the killer board, has no space next to it for special boards or anything to go with it. You have your location board as before. You have item decks, but only 3, so if there's 4, there's not a space for it. Your setup card there as well, a space for your victim pool, but it is a little bit bigger, and spaces for your 3 special victims right next to it, spaces for your 3 minor dark powers, spaces for the event deck, and 3 events, but no starting event spot specifically called out as such. They just call it Event 1. Place for your terror deck and active terror card. Nothing about the vignettes, and they do take up some space here to give you spaces for those holding boards, the victim holding boards. You can either actually place the boards on there or just use these. I don't see why you would place the boards on here. Just put them in the spots marked with the symbols. But I have seen people play it where they actually stick the boards on the mat kind of redundantly. And then Final Girl is now, or was, I guess I should say was before, because now is Series 2, up in the corner there. So basically the gist of the difference here is that if you're playing with the Series 1 mats, you're going to have spaces for everything that you pretty much see throughout more or less any game you're going to play, just about. But if that scenario requires something special like extra action cards, extra cards off to the side for the killer, a 4th item deck, whatever, you're not going to have spaces for them. You'll need to put them somewhere else. You'll need to accommodate for that. Whereas for Series 2, those mats tend to have spaces for pretty much everything that could come up, including all those little one-off type situations, but that does cause them to get rid of the holding boards, the token spot, and of course making the horror track much, much smaller. But either way, they work fine. It's just a question of whether you would rather play in a situation where you might have some stuff that isn't on the mats, or if you want to play in a way where you might have some spots on the mats that don't have anything in them. Either way, compatible across the board. No pun intended. The game mat set, by the way, is $25 if you were to buy it separately. We're going to use it as our background here as we look at the rest of the content. Now, in the Series 2 storage box, assuming you got the booster box, so you already have a core box stored with Series 1, you got the box of props. It was also a stretch goal box. It was provided separately for those who got the core box inside the storage box, as I mentioned before. It is also something available for $25 through the Kickstarter that will presumably be available as well on the Van Ryder Games website. Pretty much everything but the mystery boxes will be, but they aren't yet, so I can't quote prices there. The box of props is essentially the stretch goals that weren't elsewhere for the Series 2 Kickstarter. So it says Final Girl Box of Props, Van Ryder Games. Final Girl Box of Props with your artwork there, nothing on the back. The side, Van Ryder Games, Final Girl Box of Props. Legalese and UPC, nothing on the top. Like a feature film, the box of props, which will be sold separately, does come with a little sheet on the back of it when it's in the shrink wrap to tell you what all is going on with it. It says, open the box and see what's inside. As you already know, Final Girl produces incredibly cinematic moments. Games, as with movies, are sometimes only as good as the quality of the production. In movies, detailed sets and realistic props are very important, and the difference in bigger budget productions is clear. The box of props introduces a plethora of deluxe components, would you say they have a plethora? And goodies to enhance your Final Girl experience and take your production budget to the next level. Deluxe markers, new Final Girl cards, new signature action cards, 7 custom dice, and more await you inside. It says, important, this is an accessory product. You must have both a Final Girl core box and at least one feature film box to play. Included in this box, 1 horror track miniature, 1 deluxe bloodlust marker, 1 deluxe time marker, 1 desperation die, 1 book of desperate deaths, 6 ultimate dice, 1 ultimate dice card, 4 Final Girl cards, 10 signature action cards, 12 deluxe final health tokens, 1 rulebook. Then you got your same information here about the stats there, UPC, Legalese, Van Ryder Games. Now, for what it's worth, I have removed everything. We're going to look at it all separately and where to store it. But basically, it's a magnetic sealed box, pretty much like the core box, but it's just one of these little cardboard inserts inside. You're not really going to store much in here. This might be a good place to put, oddball items. Like what I'm tending to do is once I sleeve my cards, which I typically do for this game, I take all of the secret envelopes from both series and just dump the envelopes in here while keeping the cards in the cast and crew box. I also put my board here from the core box in here as well, because you don't need it if you're typically playing with the mats. So it kind of works as a storage box later, but basically everything that's in it, that comes in it, you're going to distribute to the core box if you're doing it the way they suggest. So what's in it? So first let me note that I'm going to keep the core box open here with the plastic part removed so we can see how this all gets organized. If you want to prepare for this organization of box of props stuff, you want to have your victim holding boards in this well, your action cards in that well also. I would note here, by the way, I do sleeve them. If you are wanting to sleeve these cards, what you really need are 60 microns or less, because otherwise some of these spaces are not gonna fit. Premium 100 micron sleeves won't work, at least not all the time. Now this is what I mean when I'm talking about the depth of these wells with the sleeved cards, okay? This is the Evomorph killer side of Into the Void. This is the location side of Wingard Cottage from A Knock at the Door. But you notice here, with all these large cards for the Evomorph, if I put these in here sleeved, it's basically right at the top of the well. There's no more room for these. So 60 microns takes you about up to the max unless you're going to put some pressure on there with your lid and hope that it doesn't pop off. Likewise, this is the Wingard Cottage location here. Not a lot of big cards, but notice the small cards max out that well in 60 micron sleeves. So most of these, you're going to be fine with any micron level of sleeve. If you want to go 100, you're going to be okay. But if you're trying to have everything uniform so you can mix and match more easily without being able to feel and tell the difference between sleeves as far as which location or whatever it's from, 60 is going to be your best bet, because otherwise you're going to be overflowing the wells, at least on these two and close on some others. For what it's worth, the ones I use are the Sleeve Kings 63.5 by 88, the card game sleeves here, and the Sleeve Kings Mini Euro card sleeves 45 by 68 here. Those fit pretty much perfectly. So you want to have your dice, your 6 dice here. You want to have your 3 meeples here for the final girl and the 2 killer ones, the one that's for the killer on the board, the other one for the horror track. All your victims up here in their slots that they tend to shift out of, plus all your hearts in here. Everything else right now I have empty, but we will be storing a combination of original and updated components. So first off, your box of props has a box of props rulebook telling you how to use all these new components. Several of them are upgrades to previously existing components. Typically, you would just use one of your red killer meeples for your horror track. Well, now, thanks to a stretch goal at $125,000, there is a mini for the horror marker. Basically like a head that if you look at it real close, kind of hard to see, it looks like the hockey mask, which of course is the reference to Jason Voorhees, even though he didn't wear it until later in the series and he wasn't even the killer in the first one, etc., etc. But there's your hockey mask looking thing, like the horror track symbol, with essentially a blade or something stuck in his head here, right? Like the blade, that's the handle, that's the blade itself, stabbed through the head into the ground. Pretty cool looking. You're going to store this carefully in this little indentation right here. At the $425,000 stretch goal, they took the old Bloodlust token, which was just a little red disc, and gave it one that is formed like the symbol, little wooden piece. Gonna put this in one of these. I tend to put it in that one. What I tend to do with this is take the 8 little counters that are easy to lose, and I just drop it in the bag with those. We'll see where the bag goes in a moment. For now, I'll take it off of there because it was going to glare. $1 million later, at the $1,425,000 stretch goal, they took that teeny tiny, kind of, inconveniently tiny little time tracker token and replaced it with a little mini, a little wooden, I guess it is, blue mini here. You'll place that and that well there. I would again put this into the little baggie here. That's all, by the way, that you'll be putting in the baggie, so you can just kind of seal it up, roll it up, or whatever, and just be ready for basically putting it on top of this. I won't just yet because I don't want the glare. Then in the core box, you had 2 white final health tokens for after the final health token has been revealed to replace it if someone came back to life. 6 black final health tokens with blank backs, and then 1 each with 1, 2, or 3 hearts in case someone does come back for sort of a second wind there at the end. So 9 black, 2 white. Well, at the $275,000 stretch goal, we got some nice chunky ones now that are plastic here. Same symbol on the front, same distribution for the most part. 6 that are blank on the back, 1 each for 1, 2, or 3 hearts. But then instead of 2 of the white ones, we got 3. Because we would need another one when playing with one of the feature films, which includes its own token to add a white one into the mix. So they made sure to cover that as well. Those will go into this well. You can make 5 stacks of 2 and then take your remaining 2 and just kind of plop them in there. Then if you remember, Hostage Negotiator had that frustration die, where basically it was a die that you could use once per game, once per negotiation in that case. And it was pretty cool because it was a 6-sided die where 5 of the faces were a success. But if you rolled the other face, you immediately lost the game. Well, at the $750,000 stretch goal, they added the Desperation die. Sides 2 through 6 are successes. Side 1 that doesn't even have a number, that symbol there, you immediately die and lose the game. So once per game, break this out, give it a roll when it's really crucial. It can get you an extra success, 5 out of 6 times. But if you roll this sucker, you gambled and lost, game over, you lose regardless of anything else. Their suggestion is to store this in the same well as the hearts. Just kind of like bury it as needed with the hearts. What's cool about it, though, aside from just the fact that it gives you that extra mechanic in the game, they also added a book of desperate deaths at the $1,350,000 stretch goal. It's similar to the Gruesome Death books. The idea here is that if you wind up using the Desperation die, and you die because of it, then look on here, which action were you trying to do when that happened? From the core box, and what we'll see in a moment, these signature action cards, or any specific action cards from any of the films in Series 1 or 2. Basically, what is it that caused you to die? Well, it is specific to what action you were trying to do to make it more thematic. Really kind of a nice touch. Also nice that this was physical immediately rather than waiting until Series 3, unlike the Gruesome Death books. At the $2 million stretch goal, we got something that's really kind of a interesting new set of mechanics here. And I say set because it's a set of so-called ultimate dice. Now, before we look at the dice, I would note here there is a card that goes with this. I will explain as we go, but this plays a big role in kind of understanding how these work. So I'm going to sit this right here, so we can come back to it as needed. So the idea is that when you're playing with the final girl and you're saving victims, you can unlock your ultimate ability once you've saved enough victims to fill all the slots on the front side of the card and get those rewards. Then you take the victims off, you flip the card, your ultimate ability is in play. Or, instead, you could choose to take an ultimate die. But which one you can take depends on how many victims you have saved that were on your card. You may have to continue saving more. So, if you have saved at least 4, either on your card, or maybe there was, say, 1 on your card, like with one of the promo final girls that we'll see, and you had to save 3 more. Whatever. Once you've saved a total of 4, and you're ready to unlock your ultimate ability, you could get either the Search or Health Tier 1 Ultimate dice. But you only get to pick one. If you're playing a Search card, you could perhaps roll the Search die. If you wind up getting a result that's going to let you take an item, or perhaps take 2 items and choose between them and put one back, this gives you 1 more item to choose from. So if you get the success that lets you pull the top 2 cards and decide which to take, this lets you pull the top 3 if you get that result. It's 3 sides of this and 3 that are blank, so 50-50 chance. You're going to store these, by the way, down here. I'll be adding them as we go. If you're playing a short rest or a long rest, which are cards that can give you back health, you might want to get the health die. There is 1 side that's blank, 1 side for 2 health, 1 side for 3 health, every other side is 1 health. So pretty good chance, right? 5 out of 6 you're going to get at least 1 extra health when you heal, but maybe as much as 3 extra health. Maybe it's a big healing moment. So those are your Tier 1s. You've saved 4 victims. Tier 2 is once you've saved a 5th victim on top of that, and that could give you the time or the movement dice. The time die is going to be used with focus or distraction, okay? And basically, if you get a symbol that shows a certain number of time symbols, either 1 or 2, you get 1 or 2 extra time from it. There is 1 blank side, 3 that have 1 time, and 2 that have 2 time. And what's interesting about this is that it's just in any result that actually results in some change in time. So if perhaps you get the 1 time here, but the result is the 1 success on focus that caused you to lose 1 time, it's basically a wash. You don't lose the time, but you don't gain the time. It's +1 -1, just evens out. Kind of a nice little mitigating factor if you're going to be doing a lot of distraction or focus. Movement, similar thing. Say you're playing a walk or a sprint, then you might get to add 1 more space of movement or 2 more spaces of movement. There's only 1 side for 2, 2 sides for 1, the other 3 sides are blank. So it's only a 50-50 chance, just like the search one, that you're actually going to get the bonus. But it's a nice bonus if you're going to be focused on moving around. So those are your Tier 2, and yes, they kind of squish to fit in there, but don't worry, they do fit. Then you got Tier 3 if you save yet another for a total of 6 victims. You get the attack or the horror dice. The attack die is this yellow one. You have 1 side that gives you 2 extra damage, 2 sides that give you 1 extra damage, but like the movement and search ones, the other 3 sides are blank, so 50-50 chance. I would note here that if you play something like this, you actually do need to generate the effect from your card to get the bonus. So let's say I roll this. Awesome, 2 extra damage, but I play a weak attack and I botch it and I deal no damage at all. Well, I don't get the bonus from it because my action didn't actually generate damage at all, so I can't add to what doesn't exist. I should note, by the way, that this would typically be played with either Weak Attack, Furious Strike, Retaliate, or Critical Blow. Then you got your Horror die, 2 faces that remove 1 horror, or move it down the track 1 face to move it down 2, the other 3, again, blank, so 50-50 chance of having the effect. You would use this when playing Focus or Distraction, which are the obvious ones, right? But also for Furious Strike or Critical Blow, because there are horror effects on those as well. The idea would be that once you have unlocked your ultimate but not flipped it over, and chosen instead to take one of the ultimate dice, you are locked into that die for the rest of the game. But there are some optional variants for these. There's the penultimate dice, where you start with one of them of your choice to have an easier game. There's the upgrade dice, where anytime you save a victim after you've selected your ultimate die, you can exchange it for a die of another type, which is kind of cool. Or the ultimate desperation, where you can remove your ultimate die from the game to actually use your desperation die a second time. So earn an ultimate die, use the desperation die once and not have it end your game, and then say, you know what, I'm getting rid of my ultimate die to roll the desperation one again. Again, it risks ending the game, but it's kind of a cool extra little mechanic added in here. The card here, by the way, just says ultimate dice on the back. I've sleeved it with a tarot sleeve. What I do is I just stick this inside the rulebook for the box of props when I stick that rulebook in with the other ones here. Remember, I made some space by taking out the board, since I always play with the mats. Now, the base game, the core box, comes with 23 action cards, 6 of which are 0 cost. The other ones you have to buy from the tableau for some cost ranging from 1 to 6. Well, in this Kickstarter, they also introduced a new type of action card called the Signature Action Card. The Signature Action Cards came in a package here of 10 of them in the box of props. They were unlocked 5 at a time at the $850,000 and $1,200,000 stretch goals. The idea is that you would either choose or randomly draw one of these prior to the start of a game and include it in the tableau with your regular game cards that you would normally play with. It gives you some kind of cool little extra action ability. So we have Parkour! I really actually like parkour. You can probably fall flat on your face and end the phase just completely right then. But what's really kind of neat is that you can basically skip over spaces with a victim or killer when you are going through your movement. So move up to 2 spaces, but skip over spaces with a victim or killer. Spend 1 time, or 1 space instead. Basically, if you have the killer and several different victims lined up in different spaces, you can basically move a heck of a lot across the map if they're kind of spread out, because you skip every space that they're in. Pretty neat. Parkour! You have Discipline, that lets you basically take a victim out of play completely, either with or without getting the benefit on your Final Girl card. Scavenge, you may recall that when you set up your item decks, you don't actually use all of the items. It's basically 12 per game, so you have some sitting off to the side. Scavenge lets you either look at 2 and keep 1, or just get 1 at random from those unused items, so keep them handy. Meditate is all about getting some health back and knocking the horror down. Intimidate lets you basically deactivate the dark power if it's already activated until the next upkeep phase, which would be at the end of that turn, either with or without lowering horror by 1. Throw lets you basically take a weapon that's usually a range 0 weapon, like a bat or something, and throw it 1 or 2 spaces away to damage the enemy. Double Up lets you pay the cost of an action card to get it immediately back so you can use it again. Then you have some new reaction cards. Ambush is kind of neat because it's not about being attacked, it's when the killer moves into your space, you can play it to basically do some damage and whatnot. Protect, which is pretty cool, that lets you basically protect a victim in your space if they're about to be killed. And then Dodge, that lets you reduce damage and move. But notice here that these all have some worse effect than normal usually as the fail effect. So, bigger reward, bigger risk, except for Double Up here. Those you're going to store in the same well as the regular action cards. Now that's all the stuff from the box of props you're going to store in the core box. There is a little bit more to see though. So you're going to take your little baggie, stick it over here, put your cover back on, Book of Desperate Deaths, box of props rulebook. Like I said, I always stick the tarot card inside it just to be safe. Rulebook, close it up, core box is good to go. This is why I'm saying that, which you'll probably want to do if you have a lot of gameplay across both storage boxes, to just go ahead and get another core box and box of props, combine them, and keep one of these in each. The other 4 items from the box of props are 4 promo Final Girls that you're probably going to want to store in the cast crew box for Series 2, which we will look at in a little bit. At $1,300,000, they unlocked 2 new promo Final Girls that both come from the game Dark Quarter that Van Ryder Games is doing with Lucky Duck Games. They have constants here, health of 5. You may use any weapon in your hand from range 0 to 2, so ranged can now do melee range, and melee can now do range, which is pretty cool here. This is unlocked after 5. Then Julia, I really like this one. 6 health, you may kill a victim in your space, she's a vampire by the way, to choose one of the following. Recover all health, inflict 1 damage on an enemy and recover 1 health, immediately move 2 spaces ignoring any movement penalties, but then flip the card back over. Notice to unlock it, it's just 1. Save a victim, gain a time, flip it over. Kill a victim in your space to do this, but now you gotta save another before you got the ability to use this again. Really kind of a neat mechanic here. I'm actually a backer of Dark Quarter, so I'm really interested in seeing these coming up later. I would note that promo Final Girls do not get miniatures at this point, but Constance and Julia will have minis of a slightly different scale in Dark Quarter. Then at $1,650,000, they added Layla. Layla specifically interacts with those new signature action cards. 5 health, choose a signature action card from out of play and take it into your hand. Not from the tableau, out of play. Pretty cool here, right? But you only get to do it the 1 time. And she recovers health whenever she saves an additional victim. Most of them gain time. Constance a moment ago gained time, and there actually isn't a mechanic for that for Julia since she's always flipping it back and forth. Hers is unlocked after 5. They also added 1 more promo Final Girl to the box that was not a stretch goal to make use of those ultimate dice a little bit more. So we have Agnes with 4 health, the oldest of the Final Girls, they specifically pointed out. Gain 2 ultimate dice of your choice. Holy crap. Very nice, but kind of weak here. Gaining time from extra victims, and it's unlocked after saving 6. And that, folks, is the box of props. We haven't even looked at any of the feature films yet. This is gonna be a long one. There's a lot to see. For now, let's jump to the other end of the way they're laid out in the storage box and look at the bonus features for Series 2. So Final Girl, bonus features, Series 2, Van Ryder Games, Final Girl bonus features, Series 2. Image there, nothing on the back. Side, Series 2, Final Girl bonus features, Van Ryder Games, Legalese, and UPC, and nothing. Another small magnetic box, you open it up, space to put the stuff we're going to see here in a moment, and it tells you what should go in here, but this is where some confusion has come up because you've got the lore and scenario book that'll be in here, the feature film rule book that'll be in here, and then the gruesome death books for the 5 different locations, which again says coming soon. They don't exist yet. They will be digital first, available physically in the Series 3 Kickstarter. But what are those other 2 items? Just like with Series 1, there is a lore and scenario book. This one at the $325,000 stretch goal mark. Basically, you may recall, essentially what this does is it gives you lore for different killers, lore at the end for the various Final Girls, though you notice here it does not include the Final Girls who were promos, right? And then as you go through, what you're going to have is a particular killer at all the different locations giving you different scenarios that you can play through. And again, that includes the vignette, just like last time. Then rather than having to have all those individual rules for the feature film boxes, you could use the feature film rulebook for Series 2 that combines them all into one little booklet here and adds some achievements that you can do. That was a stretch goal at the $375,000 mark, and this actually came before the one for Series 1 that was added at the $650,000 stretch goal. But yes, it's just all the rulebook stuff put together, a little bit bigger, and achievements along the way. I would note, by the way, before we set these aside, that this actually comes in the bonus feature box regardless. This was a stretch goal for this campaign, otherwise it is a paid item for those who are purchasing it after the fact. The other thing that comes in the bonus features box that you're not going to keep in there, you're going to instead put them in the individual feature film boxes with the killers, are epic finales. Remember, the feature film boxes come with 3 dark powers and 1 epic dark power automatically, based on the way that everything was set up, kind of looking back at how Series 1 went with its stretch goals and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the standard at this point. In this second Kickstarter, the standard became that the boxes would have 3 finales, but then 1 epic finale would be available, but instead of having people repurchase boxes, they put them in the bonus features box for that series. So in this case, we have 1 more bite for the big bad wolf, We Know Where You Live for the intruders, Final Assimilation for the organism, Enter the Madhouse for Ratchet Lady, and Razor Tail for the Evomorph. We will see those more when we get to those individual feature films. Now, finally, let's look at the actual feature films, then the vignettes, and even more stuff. So first we have Into the Void. Of course, when in shrink wrap, the back is going to have a little sheet on it that gives you a little bit of information about it, sort of sets the stage, and has some important information to go along with it in terms of what is actually included here. So let's take a look at this one. We will look at all of them as we go. All aboard the USS Conrad. It's kill or be killed when you're being hunted in space. The Evomorph will evolve over the course of the game and features a vanishing mechanic where it will disappear only to return when you least expect it, or perhaps if you plan it right, into a well-laid ambush. The USS Conrad includes key cards that can be used to access different parts of the ship. Will you kill your foe the old-fashioned way? Self-destruct the ship and escape? Or perhaps you'll try to airlock the killer into the void. Then they're all going to have a little warning here. Important, this is not a standalone game. You must have the Final Girl core box to play. There's an included in this box section that's going to have information about what all's in it. We're going to look at all that, so no sense in going into it in detail on here. Ryder Games, all the legalese and whatnot, the UPC, and the same information there about the playtime, number of players, and age as on the box we looked at. So we have Final Girl, Ryder Games, this one by Evan Derrick with art by Tyler Johnson, starring the Evomorph as the killer, sort of like an alien xenomorph type character. The name did change, Evolmorph. It changed a couple of times. This was the final name for it. On the other side, we have Final Girl, same stuff. And the location, the USS Conrad, which also had its name changed. At one point it was the USCSS Patna, which I believe is actually a real name from the film series. One side is designed to sit horizontally, Ryder Games, Final Girl, Into the Void, Evomorph, USS Conrad. The other side is vertical to go in the storage box or sit on the shelf like this. Final Girl, Into the Void. Again, killer and location here. Top blank, bottom, little symbol with your stats and your legalese and everything. We're not going to look at that every single time, but just to show you for this one. And as before, it is the magnetic cover. So we'll start with the killer side first here, taking off our magnetic piece. I would note here the magnets seem a lot stronger this time than they were last time. They are designed, by the way, they've mentioned, with the way that this space is, to actually fold them back so they lay flat. So that is okay, it's not going to damage it. There's your killer board here for the Evomorph, starting with level of 4 on the horror track. 4 and 10 health, that depends on which version of the Evomorph you're dealing with at the time. There's your Bloodlust track. Notice that instead of Dark Power on here, there is one that's going to trigger a Dark Power, but it's the Evolve item here that is unique to the Evomorph. And before we look at the content, I would note here that the trays changed again. So you had your original trays that weren't good for sleeved cards and didn't taper quite well. Then you had the upgraded, updated trays that you could order to replace them if you already owned Series 1 that changed the depths of the wells depending on if it's the killer side or the location side, and had plenty of room for sleeved cards. The ones provided for Series 2 are essentially the same, except they note whether it's the killer or location side actually on the tray itself. Now, we're not going to look at them yet, but underneath the trays, always make sure to look. There's 2 Final Girls with each feature film, and each side will have one of those for so-and-so's eyes only envelopes that has a special set of instructions and card inside. These are considered sort of a spoiler. We will save these for the end along with the mystery box, but notice that the design of these have changed. Back in the original Kickstarter, this is what they looked like. No extra text. There was no instructions on when to actually break these out and use them, so you could pretty much use them at any time. It told you how to use them, but not when to use them. There were a lot of suggestions like, hey, since these are so special, maybe save them until you have won a game with that final girl, then open the envelope. They liked the idea so much that heading into the second Kickstarter, they actually changed the look of the envelopes. So if you have the Series 1 stuff from the second Kickstarter instead of the original Kickstarter, or you have Series 2 stuff, now they say do not open until you have survived a game with that final girl. Again, we'll look at these later. Assume as we go through all these feature film boxes that we're going to see 2 of them in each, one on either side for each of the 2 final girls. We won't be mentioning it because we're going to see them later. So you're going to have your little rule book for the Evomorph here. The symbol is an egg. And you notice it does fold out. Quite a few new mechanics to go with this one. One new thing you're going to have with the Evomorph is 3 new copies of a new action card specific to this killer called Scan. There will be points where the Evomorph will disappear off the board. You don't know where this alien creature is that is stalking you in the game. But you can use Scan, and basically depending on what the result is, you can keep it from showing up in certain places if you scanned and found that it was clear. Or you can scan and have it pop up, and then skip the next killer phase so you can actually do something about the fact that it just popped up in your space. This is what I mean by those cards that would go, like, down there in the tableau in those special spots. Notice, by the way, this is one of the rare cards that has a 3 success symbol up here. So it's not just 2, 1, or a fail. You can have 3. Say you're rolling 3 dice, you wind up with 3 successes. There you go. There are 6 of the little X tokens, similar to Frightmare on Maple Lane. You'll use those, they got the egg on the back, to denote when you've scanned a location so it can't ambush you from there. I would note, by the way, that any special action cards for a film do have their symbol on the back so you don't accidentally mix them all up. As I mentioned, as you're playing, the Evomorph will evolve through different stages based on those spots on the Bloodlust track. To keep track of that, you have an evolution card, which has 3 different stages: the hatchling, the youngling, or the adult. For the hatchling, you only increase Bloodlust if the hatchling actually is the one that kills a victim. So if they die some other way, you're fine, no Bloodlust increase. And if Bloodlust would increase otherwise, you instead lose 1 time. Kind of still getting the negative effect, but not the Bloodlust change there. For the youngling, upon evolving, that symbol, that basically means that they disappear. They disappear off the board. That's when you need to start scanning to figure out where the heck they are. And Bloodlust now increases normally. Then the adult, upon evolving, the max health increases to 10. That's why the board had a 4 for the hatchling or youngling, then has that /10. That represents the adult. Then the Evomorph recovers all health. Oh, goody. Then you'll reveal the Dark Power, hence the fact that the Dark Power line was connected to the second evolved space on the Bloodlust track, and rotate the Ambush deck. We'll see that in a moment. Notice the spaces here. That's how you keep track of which form it has taken, using a little green token, kind of like the old Bloodlust marker before the Deluxeified version. Now, what did I mean by ambush cards a moment ago? You have a deck of 10 ambush cards here. They are double-sided in the sense that there's a top and a bottom half that rotate differently, 180 degrees. The backs are the same. So when the youngling is the one in play, it's sitting like this. It says youngling. When you draw, you look at that side. Eventually, when it's the adult, you rotate. Then when you draw, you're looking at the adult side at the top. Basically, when the Evomorph disappears, you stop doing any of the regular killer actions from the back of the finale card or the finale card itself, and you stop doing anything in relation to drawing terror cards. It just kind of pauses in that sense. But you then have to draw one of these each time. And it'll have some kind of thing that's happening that's bad for you typically. And there's a rating up at the top of how powerful that particular effect is. Rated from 10 down to 1. They're not placed in that particular order. They're shuffled, but that just lets you know what level they are. And there are some things like events that might say, sorry, you drew a 1, draw again. It's not powerful enough. Stuff like that. Okay. So we have our youngling side, our adult side, but essentially doing the same kind of stuff. Something to allow there to still be negative effects happening, some thematic things happening, even when the alien is effectively off the board temporarily. Then in line with the films from Series 1, you have 4 Dark Power cards, 3 regular and 1 Epic Dark Power. They all have the bottom of the killer on them because they sit face down on the board that way. We have Razor Claws, Symbiotic Camouflage, Acid Blood, and then the Epic Dark Power Razor Tail. Then you have your finales. In the actual feature film box, there are 3. There is an epic finale in the bonus features box, as mentioned previously. Now is when we're going to actually start seeing them. The regular ones are The Perfect Organism, Death in the Dark, and Blitz of Death, and then the epic finale from the bonus features box is Impenetrable Armor. We then have 2 final girls, as is always the case. They are on the killer side. With 7 health, we have Jeanette, right, like Vasquez. So we have, you are considered to have an additional hand for purposes of holding and using item cards. Place 2 tracking markers on this card. When using an item with limited uses, you may use one of these markers instead. Really awesome with items. Each additional victim saved after activating this is 1 health. That is activated after 4 victims are saved. Pretty powerful there. Then we have Ellen, right, Ripley, basically. Health of 4. When successfully resolving a search action card, you may choose to freely look through all the location's unused item cards instead of the Spaces item deck. So more options. And then we've got the time up, which is kind of the typical thing oftentimes for extra victims saved. That is unlocked after 6 are saved. You're going to store these, like the promos, in the cast crew box, not that box. Then the Evomorph has 16 terror cards. Typically, you would take the terror cards for the killer and the location, shuffle them together, and draw 10 to be your standard terror deck, unless it tells you something otherwise. This one does. This one's terror deck when you play is actually only 8. So even if every single one came from the Evomorph, you're still only going to see half of them in a single game if you get entirely through the deck. So lots of variation here. You have 1 copy each of, oh god, where did it go? Causing it to vanish. 1 of Exoskeleton, which is kind of rough because basically you add another final health token on top of the old one. It doesn't change its total health, but when you flip the final health token, now it has 2 to flip, and either one of them could bring it back to life. Yikes. Scratches in the Dark, Skull Burster, Acid Spray, Toying with the Prey, and then when it comes to the ones that have 2, you have 2 copies of It Came Out of the Shadows, and then Shadow Blitz, and then 3 of course, Hudson. Game over, man. Game over. Wish there was one called We're in Some Real Pretty Shit Now, but I guess not. Then we have 3 minor dark powers, which are Sideswipe, Dead Silence, and Shadow Dread. You might notice, by the way, as I was showing you the terror cards, I've put the miniatures in here. We're going to look at them when we look at the mini pack later. The other side is going to be your location side. I've taken out the tray to show you here. Yes, it does say location. Deeper well for smaller cards, smaller area for large cards because of the way locations tend to be. And the location here, the USS Conrad, is a ship. What's cool about the ship and its mechanics is there are certain things where you can activate things throughout the ship, like the furnace, to actually do some damage and whatnot. You also have these corridors. If you play Nemesis, it's like the technical corridors, where you can use key cards to unlock them to allow you to travel through them, which is pretty cool as sort of shortcuts instead of having to go kind of in the very specific pattern of the directions that are allowed door to door here. Pretty cool. Thematically, this is probably my favorite film from Series 2 just because I love the Alien films, and I'm particularly a big fan of games like Nemesis and Lifeform. So we have our rules. Again, a little bit longer, folds out. As is typical, we have 5 setup cards. Notice the symbol there is like a starburst kind of thing here. So we have Space Rave, not Race, Rave, Born in Flames, Bloody Feast, Showdown, and Junction Danger. We then, as is typical, have 10 event cards, Faulty Wiring, Master Access, Cluttered Shafts, Emergency Override, Good Cookin', Weapons Locker, Cramped Escape Pods, and then we get 3 that use the special victim meeples, Orphan Girl, Newt, basically, Jonas, as opposed to Jones the cat, and the Captain. Jones, Jonesy, whatever, right? And then we have 20 different item cards. Among your items, there's one that actually sits to the side that doesn't actually go into one of the decks. That's the super loader, like the power loader here, right? So essentially this initially sits off to the side. A token for it sits in the hangar to start with, and yes, there's a miniature in the vehicles pack to replace it. We'll see that later. And you can use it if you find the super loader key. You then have one regular item card, the remote beacon, that needs to use a token, so there's a token to go with it. And there are 6 key card items. 1 starts in your inventory, 2 start out to the side, the other ones get shuffled with the regular items and could show up in the item decks here. Basically, when you get one of these, you're putting a key card token on it. So there's 6 of those. And you could use one of those key cards to do a lot of different things, including opening up those shafts, those maintenance shafts, which the enemy can't follow you through, or other stuff around the ship that we'll look at here in a moment. But again, 6 of those. Then 11 sort of regular items. We have mysterious pills, remote monitor, motion tracker, flamethrower, remote access, personal beacon, emergency access, ship's manifest, thermal visor, energy drink, vibro claw, digging it, and that wraps up your 11. Then you'll also notice on the board that some of these spaces have purple backgrounds and this little symbol here that lets you know there's some type of maintenance ability you could do in that location. Doing so involves the maintenance cards that just kind of sit off to the side for you. And basically, once you put a certain number of key cards on it, there are abilities that you can use. So for instance, this one lets you open the airlock using an airlock token. This one lets you activate the self-destruct using a token for a countdown here. This one lets you activate the crusher in the trash compactor or the incinerator in the furnace. Then we have 8 terror cards, one of which actually uses one of those tokens, again, kind of the skull token here, that is catastrophic hull breach. Then we have incinerator malfunction, garbage day, system reboot, gas leak, solar interference, let's test the maintenance shafts, and 1 minor dark power, slippery. This can suck, because the killer can move through the maintenance shaft like you now. That brings us to our next feature film, which is Panic at Station 2891, or how are we supposed to say it, basically based on The Thing. Setting the stage on the back, can you trust anyone at Station 2891? You won't know who you can trust when playing against the organism. How can you fight what you can't see? Featuring 3 different types of organisms, you'll never know what you're going to face. Station 2891 features new and unique challenges. The only escape is the helicopter. Will you try to save your comrades against all odds, or look out for numero uno and use them to buy yourself time? Standard warning, standard content listing that we're going to look at, and standard bottom. So we again have essentially the same setup here. This one is designed by AJ Porfirio with art by Roland McDonald. Hey, I said it right that time. This is your organism side for the killer. Spine. The station location side. Horizontal version. Yeah. Now the organism side here has a pretty heavy set of rules. So we've got a flip out one with 4 pages. Now before we look at the actual location, let's look at this insert. Because the little insert, the tray, whatever you want to call it here, is a little bit different because it has these oversized cards. 6 of these different oversized card types that need a place to sit. Unfortunately, not a good size for sleeving at all. So it is a standard sort of killer side, except you've got a different kind of cover on it in this case. Sorry for the glare there. A different cover with this indentation there. And yes, more minis. We'll see them later. So this is your rather unusual killer board. Okay. You've got a track here for Bloodlust, but what happens is going to kind of depend here. You have a space for minor dark powers, a horror starting point of 5. There is no starting health to note here on the board for the organism. The idea is that there is some type of organism loose on the base. There's always at least 1 killer, but could be as many as 3, depending on what happens when exposed victims have their test results determined to figure out if they are organisms themselves. So you'll have your board out, but then you're going to start with these 3 exposed victim cards sitting here in the spaces on the board, randomized. When you start out, you're actually not going to have a killer on the board yet. but you're going to take the one killer meeple that is designed for representing the killer on the board rather than the horror track, plus 2 new extra killer meeples that are provided, or whatever you want to call them, the gray and black here, and they're going to be out there on the board. They're going to just kind of replace some victims that are already out there on the board. They're the exposed victims. They represent these guys here. There's a way to test to see if someone who is exposed is an organism. If they're assimilated, as it's called, you take the rightmost one of these and flip it and see what type of organism it is. Then you're going to take that off, and you have a matching mutated organism card that sits there with this on the back, and you're going to flip it, and there's the crazy effects of this one. And what's crazy is when that's revealed, you set up their health. Notice there wasn't any over here. You set up their health in the little track over here. Bloodlust has already possibly been going up, and you then apply every single effect of all the bloodlust from the bottom up to whatever level it's on. So killer panics, blah, 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 just straight up there. It also has an interesting thing at the top where there's now a killer action that it takes during the killer phase, right, during the first part of the killer phase. But then there's another thing off to the side here that only activates once the finale has been triggered, hence the F symbol there. And you'll wind up, potentially, with 3 of these on the board, making for a pretty difficult encounter here. I would note, when you do one of these, when you flip it, the meeple stays on the board to represent that creature, so you need a way to tell which is which. They give you 3 tokens with the different colored meeples on them. That's the symbol for the organism. And you just, like, stick it in the little spot there up above. Speaking of tokens, there's also 1 extra white health token, because you might wind up needing this if you're playing against all of them. That brings the total of these in the game to 3, which is why there's that extra one in the box of props. Remember, you're only ever going to need a maximum of 3 of these. Yes, there's you plus possibly 3 organisms, but remember those final health tokens, there's only 1 that has 1 health, 1 that has 2, and 1 that has 3. So you'll never have 4 people come back to life in a single game. As far as actually testing to see whether or not someone is assimilated, that's where 4 new item cards come in. They're all identical. They are the test kit. You don't mix them into the item decks where you have to find them, thank goodness. They sit in a spot above each of the item decks so that if you do get an item from that location, you could take one from the regular item deck or take the test kit from that location. Most maps will only need 3. Some, like Maple Lane, will need 4 because there's 4 item decks, hence giving you 4 of them. To do a test, you'll be there with one of those exposed victims, and you'll use a test results card. There's only 3 of them, and there's really only 2 possibilities. 2 of them, safe. Everything's fine. Or assimilated, which means it's time to break out one of those creatures. When a safe result is pulled, then you remove it from the game. When an assimilated result is pulled, you shuffle it back in with these because more than one could have been assimilated. And by the way, if one of those victims gets killed, you do test immediately to see if they were assimilated, and that way you know whether to raise bloodlust because a victim was really killed, or nope, sorry, it was one of the killers, so screw them, no bloodlust. There actually aren't any dark powers, epic or regular, for this one, just finales. So the regular finales that come with it are reductive assimilation, regenerative assimilation, and cognitive assimilation. The epic finale, which is in the bonus features box but will be stored with the killer, is final assimilation. Notice they don't have killer actions because the killer actions are on the individual cards I showed you with that finale section to them, but it does say for each one that when that card is revealed, when the finale is flipped, anybody who is exposed, who hasn't been tested yet, immediately becomes assimilated. You assume, yes, they were one of the creatures. There's no chance they're not. Then we have our 16 terror cards, 1 each of "It just absorbed them." Have you seen how disgusting it is? It could be anywhere, or anyone. It senses we are vulnerable. It must be you. Are we alone? Who can we trust? And then 2 copies each of Hit and Run, Survive at All Costs, Someone is Destroying the Tests, and then some minor dark powers: acidic body fluids, extra legs, and thick skin. I would note, by the way, any of these things telling the killers to take actions, they all will, starting with the one on the left side of the board and going to the right. One other thing is on this side of the box, that is the lab token. Basically, when you're playing with the station that comes with it, there is a lab, and that is one place you can do a test without needing a test kit. But other locations won't have a lab, so instead, you place this where it says to place the killer at the beginning of the game, since there's no killer actually out there, and that just tells you where to put a lab for the same purpose. Speaking of the station, let's take a look at the other side at Station 2891. We have our normal 3 item slots with the setup and everything up here. The idea here is there are indoor and outdoor spaces. Outdoors, you may wind up getting frostbite. The outdoor spaces are these here. Then you got your main building, which is basically all the indoor spaces except for these 2 here. That does play a role. You also notice there are some hallways here that are pretty narrow, but you would still be traveling within them. So what you have is symbols that relate to those victim holding boards, the ones from the core box that are not on the Series 2 mats anywhere, but were on Series 1. And you just kind of sit that off to the side. Anybody who's in that hallway, you would just put on those boards until they move out of the hallway there. So a very indoor-outdoor based scenario here. Notice that one of them, as I said, is the lab, so that is where you can do a test for free if you're playing with this location. Notice one other crazy thing here. There's only one exit space, and it's a special one. It's a helipad. You have a special helicopter card. You're going to sit this kind of off to the side, probably up here somewhere, the feature film special cards. And you have a helicopter that starts at the station, basically, right? You can put up to 3 victims into the helicopter and then use a new action card called Fly Faster. Typically, there's other cards that'll do it, but mostly that card, to cause them to move in the helicopter. They're not actually saved until they're at the Arctic airport, and you have to move the helicopter there, then move it back to save anybody else. It can only take up to 3 at a time, and it is making round trips. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to save anybody. Here's that new action card. Notice it has that little snowflake kind of symbol there. And basically, each of those helicopter symbols moves the helicopter 1 space on that track. So it's your way of sort of sending them back and forth. Thankfully, it only costs 1 time to get it, but there is only 1 of these in the game. So basically, you could use it, but then you wouldn't be able to use it the next turn because you couldn't purchase it back until the subsequent planning phase. As is typical, 5 setup cards, a nice stew, clear the grounds, R&R, quitting time, and good morning. We then have our 10 event cards. Someone pulled the fire alarm. Don't worry, we're here to help. Who goes there? Heavy storm. Pair up. And then I really like this one, hidden weapons cache. Basically, what you're going to do with this is you have these tokens that all say armory. There's 4 of them as I slide around in my hand here. You're going to place these in all those outdoor spaces except the helipad. And then when you go to one, you're able to flip them, basically. And if it's an X, nothing happens. But if it's this symbol, the gun, basically that's the hidden weapons cache. That's the armory, so to speak. Basically take all the weapons from the item cards that weren't used during the initial setup for those initial decks of items for the different locations, shuffle them together, and those become a searchable item deck without one face up on the top for that specific location where the token came up. That is your new armory, your hidden cache. Pretty cool. Then you have, there's been an accident in the lab, another one that uses a specific new token, this rather large one for the hole at the lab. Basically, there's your lab. You place it like so, essentially, and now there's a hole, so now the lab is adjacent to this outdoor space. Then you got your 3 that deal with the special victims, comms specialist, what's up, doc, and chow time. I should note, by the way, speaking of tokens, as I showed you some there, this is the helicopter token that lets you know that it's sitting there at the helipad or not, and how you track it on the card. Then you have 18 item cards. There's actually 2 copies of two-way radio, one of which you start with in your inventory at the beginning of the game. So 2 of two-way radio, 2 of flamethrower, 2 of flare gun, 2 copies of Knife, and then 2 dogs here. We will see 3 eventually, but 2 for now. We have Thule, the Alaskan Malamute, and Char, the Alaskan Malamute. Then Crucifix, Axe, List of Things, Old Revolver, Lucky Dice, First Aid Kit, Roller Skates, and then Ski Dozer Keys. So what is this? Well, the Ski Dozer token is going to start on any space of your choice that is adjacent to a searchable space. And basically, it lets you, if you have these Ski Dozer keys, move around to any of those outdoor spaces, or you could turn around and use it to essentially create that hole in the wall in the lab if you wanted to. You know, in case the event doesn't do it and you want that adjacency. Yes, there'll be a miniature. Then you got 8 terror cards, and they're all kind of interesting here. They're all unique, and they all have this same bottom that we're going to take a look at. We don't know what this means yet. We'll see that in a second. That means we're moving the helicopter. So anytime a terror card from the location gets pulled, at least at the end, the helicopter is able to be moving out there. So we have, we can't stay here. They just left, or they just left. I mixed up my Shatnerisms there. Excuse me. The generator is out. It's not safe in here. What supplies are in the chopper? It's happy hour. Tell me where it is. We'll be dead by morning. Those symbols indicate frostbite tokens, okay? And you've got a total of 8 of those. Basically what happens when that symbol shows up is you take one of these and you apply it to every victim, enemy, or final girl who is in an outdoor space. They are running the risk of frostbite. If that symbol shows up again and they already have a token, they lose 1 health, which for a victim means they're immediately dead, right? When it comes to getting rid of frostbite, it's actually fairly easy. You just have to go indoors, because if you're indoors with a frostbite token, when the upkeep phase happens, the frostbite token is gone, you've warmed yourself up. Nice mechanic. The station side here is not as complex, so we just have one little sheet here with rules on the front and back, and the front is mostly components. For the first time and not the last time here, I have forgotten to show you the final girls as I show you this one, because I keep them in the cast and crew box. For the organism side of this one, we have 2 new final girls. We have Kate and Yuki. So we'll start with Kate here. Health of 7, but this will be kind of different because it'll change on either side. Your maximum health is now 7. Immediately recover all health. While at full health, you roll +1 die for horror rolls. For each additional victim save, receive 2 health. So basically, she's like a health machine. Takes 6 victims save to do it, but notice that until she saves them, she has 4 health. But she also has 2 that are recovering health as she goes as well. Yuki's ultimate, once per turn, you may play a copy of the guard card as though it was in your hand. That's pretty cool. No need to purchase them as long as you're only using 1 per turn. For each additional victim saved, receive 1 horror track depletion. Hers is unlocked after 4 victims are saved, health of 6 on both sides. That brings us to the third feature film, A Knock at the Door, which, as creepy as it is, and as interesting as the art style is for this one, I have to laugh most of the time when I hear this title because I can't help but think, and this is my age, of Three's Company. I think it was Three's Company, right? Come and knock on the door. We'll be waiting for you, and all that kind of stuff, or whatever it was it said, that sticks in my head since childhood. It comes up every time I think of this film. Setting the stage on the back, lock the doors at Wingard Cottage. The intruders are here. Face not 1, not 2, but 3 killers. You thought 1 was hard, but you're really going to have to stay on your toes against these murderous menaces. Wingard Cottage offers a new challenge with unique events and a new crafting mechanism that lets you take ordinary items and turn them into epic weapons. Stick with that knife, or scrounge up some wood and nails to craft the Obliterator. It will be up to you. Just make the call before it's too late. Standard warning, contents that we're going to look at, and then standard bottom. This is by Mike Martins with art by Heather Vaughn. We have the Intruders, showing you the sides here, and Wingard Cottage. As is typical, we will start with the killer side here. This is an interesting one. Notice it's got that sort of weird mask sort of face going on there. Basically what we've got here is an interesting situation of 3 different killers. Holy crap. They're not all super powerful, but 3 different killers on the board at the same time at Wingard Cottage or wherever it might be. This is our board here. There is just the one Bloodlust track, Dark Power Finale, all that kind of stuff. Basically, what we're going to see is that what happens depends on who's the active killer out of the three. And there are spaces here with each of the three individual killer faces. These are Trish, Baghead, and Zeke. Or as you see them here, Trish, Baghead, and Zeke. You notice here that for each one, there's a different colored meeple indicator to tell you which is which, and a place for a final health token for each. It will start with 6 health per killer, horror level on 3. During play, you'll see which one is the active killer change. There's a symbol that can change it, or if you wind up dealing damage to one, they immediately become the active killer. Or if one of them dies, it jumps up to the uppermost that's still alive. The way you're going to track that is with this little active killer token here, has a set symbol there on the back. Basically, just put it over the face of whichever one is active as it moves up and down. And yes, it does loop around as necessary as you go. As with the one we just looked at, you're going to need some extra meeples for this. There's one gray and one black to represent the other 2 killers, along with the red one from the core box. You also might run into a situation where, just like, again, with the previous film we just looked at, you need another white final health token, so there's an extra one in here for a cardboard one. Again, the box of props already has the extra white one. You got your Dark Power cards, 3 regular, 1 epic, that is Strength in Numbers, Mascophobia, No Remorse, and the epic Won't Stay Down. Then you're going to have your finales. Notice that the killer action is an all killers thing. If it says all killers, every single one of them does it from top to bottom, whichever ones are still alive at that point. We have our 3 regular. We have the all killers action up here for Release the Beast. We have Hunt, Sweet Hunt. Notice this symbol here. This is how the active killer changes up and down the track based on which version of this symbol is showing here. So we have Hunt, Sweet Hunt. So something happens, then the active killer changes. Then You're Gonna Die, where one of them will do something, then it'll switch, then the other will do something. So that's pretty rough there. And then the epic finale, We Know Where You Live. Again, this one is in the bonus features box initially. Then finally, we've got our 16 terror cards. We have one of We're All Going to Die, one of They're Everywhere, one of Go Away, one of Where Are They Coming From, and then 2 of It Was Wearing a Mask, 2 of They Will Hunt You, 2 of There's Blood Everywhere, 2 of We're Not Gonna Make It Through the Night, 2 of Why Are They Doing This to Us? Then we have 2 minor dark powers, amphetamines, and coordinated attack. And I actually think I missed it earlier. There is the rule sheet, and it is another fold out one to use a lot of space there. Then we have Wingard Cottage, our map here. We've basically got, again, indoor spaces and outdoor spaces. We have the house versus other indoor spaces like the boathouse and whatnot here. Interestingly, we have special symbols here in some of the locations representing what are called supply items that we'll see here in just a moment. This is basically a location based around the idea of crafting, which is kind of cool. So when you're on one of these specific spaces with a supply item symbol, you can spend 1 time to take a supply item, which are just kind of laying out ready to go. You have wood, discarded tools, rope, or nails. When you start the game, you take 10 crafted item cards, a new type of item card, shuffle them, and deal out 4 near the board, so that if you ever get to the point where you have the supply items needed to craft them, you could craft them. And they all have the instructions on exactly what you need. Like in this case, wood, rope, discarded tools, and nails. You need all 4 of them, and to spend 4 time to get rid of those. They go back basically to the available area in order to create the Obliterator, which is this crazy-ass weapon thing here that takes 2 hands but can deal 3 extra damage when you attack and that sort of thing. Assuming it's not a reaction. Anyway, what you got here are the Obliterator, Spiked Slingshot, Nail Gun, Sawed-Off Shotgun, Porcupine, Disemboweler, Snare, Nail Trap, Spear, and Nail Bat. You notice that the Nail Trap and the Snare both have symbols up in the corner and 3 uses. So for each of those crafted items, we've got 3 each of tokens for the Snare or the Nail Trap. The symbol, by the way, for Wingard Cottage is the house. While we're on the subject of item cards, let's look at the other 16 regular ones. We have Trash Can Lid, Map, Shotgun, fireplace poker, blender, lucky rabbit's foot, energy drink, first aid kit, 1/8 inch chisel, mysterious pills, 2 copies of blueprint, 2 of wooden bat, 2 of knife. I would note, by the way, that some of those crafted items do use regular items. Like the sawed-off shotgun doesn't just use the supply items, it also uses the shotgun. Notice the shotgun has 2 uses. If you use that shotgun once, and so you only have 1 use left, then you use it to craft the sawed-off shotgun, that token carries over, so you only have 1 use of the sawed-off shotgun. You don't get both because you already used 1 from when it was just the regular shotgun. Also among your small cards, you have your 5 setup cards. We have Dysfunctional Family, Fishing Trip, Grad Party, Couples Weekend, and Special Occasion. Then you got your 10 events: Getting Resourceful, Escape Attempt, Battle Ready, Brainstorming, and now we're into the ones that have tokens. Home Security. That uses these 3 home security alarm tokens. Basically, if there are no killers in the house, you can use that card to activate the security system. Once it's activated, none of the killers can enter the house, but every time they try, one of these tokens is an alarm going off that gets put on top of that event card. Once all 3 are on it, it's disabled, it's gone. So basically, you can stop the killers from entering the house 3 times in a row using this. Then you got a vehicle here, the Kick Scooter, represented by a little scooter token. Yes, there'll be a mini. Then 3 that use your special victim meeples marked for death, Loser Boyfriend, and Another Way Out, which also includes the boat token. Basically, this blue meeple is like the neighbor, and the neighbor has boat keys. So basically, they can help someone escape if they get to the lakefront, and whenever that comes into play, you stick this boat token, kind of like the one we saw with one of the Series 1 films. That boat token will wind up being put into the lake. But only the neighbor can use it. It's not like the final girl can. She's not trying to escape, she's trying to kill the bad guys. My apologies, I do think I just missed one a moment ago. Booby Traps is the other one. It had fallen onto the table underneath some other cards. You got your 8 terror cards. Those are, that wasn't a random attack. There's someone out there. Oh my god, what is happening to us? What happened while we were gone? We were passing by and thought we heard a scream. Is Tammy home? They can't get in here, right? Now get the hell out of my house. For what it's worth, I can't help but hear this in the voice of Sheridan from Babylon 5. Now get the hell out of our galaxy. Babylon 5 nerd, for sure. And because for some reason I keep forgetting to mention them first, Wingard Cottage has its rule sheet. It is just double-sided, not a fold-out. Before we leave this one, I should note, you would pack them away in the cast and crew box, but there are 2 new final girls on the intruders side of this one. We have Ava and Jenny. I guess it's Jenny, not Guinea, Jenny. We have a health of 6 for Jenny here. Choose 2 of the following that will apply to all results while resolving that action for the remainder of the game. Move +1 space when resolving walk, +1 health when resolving short rest, +1 damage when resolving weak attack, +1 horror track depletion when resolving focus. For each additional victim saved, resolve a time up. That is after 6. Then Ava, when making a horror roll, you may re-roll all 1 blank results. That is blank, but it is a 1 blank, not a 1 or 2 blank. For each additional victim saved, we have the horror dropping by 1. She has a health of 5. I'm not sure if I mentioned there. And then we have 5 to unlock. The next feature film box is Once Upon a Full Moon. This is the one that you might think of as kind of like the basic box. It doesn't have a ton of new rules. It has a tiny bit, so it's probably the easiest to learn for someone who's coming into Final Girl, trying to learn the game, but doesn't own anything from Series 1. Setting the stage on the back when in shrink wrap, Unhappily Ever After in the Storybook Woods. This isn't the big bad wolf you imagined as a child. It's bigger and badder than ever. Can you slow the wolf down before it becomes fast enough to move anywhere on the board in a single turn? Featuring hunt and slay modes, which are actually track and slay modes, the killer will take different actions depending on what mode it is in, making for yet another unique challenge to survive. Storybook Woods features a unique layout with a river running through the land. You'll have to cross rickety bridges only you and 1 victim can safely traverse. Fairy tale events and items may be a magical miracle or a crippling curse. Will you make it out of the woods alive? Standard warning, content listing, which we're going to see here, so there's no point in going through it, and standard bottom. So we have our cover art there with the big bad wolf. This is by Julie Aaron with Tyler Johnson doing the artwork. Similar spine. The other side noting the location, Storybook Woods, and our horizontal side here. So we have our killer board here, space for 3 minor dark powers at the top, starting horror of 5, starting health of 9. We have our track there off to the side. Nothing particularly unusual with his board. Like I said, it's pretty basic overall. As always, we'll have those dark powers, 3 regular and 1 epic. Notice these have a little notation here, mode, with a little symbol. Basically, the one unique feature here for Big Bad Wolf is that he has 2 modes. He starts the game in track mode, and when the dark power flips over, he enters slay mode. We'll get to those here in just a moment as far as their implications go, but it does have a reminder here that when the dark power is face down, it's track mode. The dark powers include Ravenous Hunger, Destructive Roar, Sixth Sense, and a Killing Machine as the epic dark power. And notice that they have a different symbol here. In the track symbol and the slay symbol, that's the mode that he's in, depending on where the dark power is flipped. If the epic dark power is the one that comes out, he's technically in both modes at the same time. Now, the implications of that are on the finale cards, because it says if tracking mode, do this, if slay mode, do this. So basically what you got here is different killer actions depending on whether the dark power has been revealed or not. The 3 regular finales that are in the box are Thrill of the Hunt, Rampant Growth, and Tasty Treats. And then if you have the bonus features box for Series 2, your epic finale is One More Bite. That's a lot of stuff happening there. He then has his 16 terror cards. We have 3 of the Jaws that bite, 2 of the Claws that scratch, I'll Huff and I'll Puff, times 2. So yes, this is like Big Bad Wolf from Little Red Riding Hood meets Big Bad Wolf from 3 Little Pigs, essentially, in the references there. Come closer, my pretty, all the better to eat you. Going for a walk today, on the hunt. Grandma, is that you? It snarled with red glowing eyes. And then minor dark powers, what big ears you have, what big teeth you have, and what big eyes you have. Kind of catching on to the theme here. What's interesting, though, you'll notice, is that what happens in some cases does depend on mode again, track or slay. That's the running theme. There's your symbol for Big Bad Wolf. It is, of course, a wolf head. There are no tokens, by the way, in this particular box. It's basically all cards. Except, of course, for the rule sheet, right? That basically just gives you what little information is needed for this unique killer. But speaking of cards, we do get 2 new final girls, Gretel and Red. Red has 5 health. Her ultimate, once per action phase, if an enemy is within 2 spaces of you, you may move 1 space for free. For each additional victim saved, receive 2 health. That is unlocked after 6 saves. Then Gretel, you may convert a 2 result to a success by discarding 3 action cards. So 5 and 6 are successes. 3 and 4 you can convert by discarding 2 action cards, and then a 2, discard 3. So it just gives her more versatility in that way. If you have big hands to do some mitigation, for each additional victim saved, receive 1 horror drop. And this is after a total of 5. And I don't think I mentioned there, just in case I didn't, that she has a health of 6, a little more robust than Red. The location side is the Storybook Woods. Basically what you got here is less location spaces than a lot of the maps. You have an interesting situation where there's this river going around it, and you can only actually cross it at 3 specific points, normally, and those bridges are kind of rickety. So normally, if the final girl moves, 2 victims could go with her. In this case, across a bridge, only 1 victim can go with her. There's also a raft item that we'll wind up seeing. See these little raft icons. When you get it, you basically put 4 raft tokens down wherever those are, and those become spaces you can move along using the river and so forth, as we'll see when we see that card here in just a moment. So kind of an interesting map, some interesting things going on, but not as complex as some. So we'll start with the setup cards with the little evergreen tree type thing there. We've got Scatter, Forest Dwellers, Picnic, Family Visit, and Breadcrumb Trail. Then we have our 10 event cards. We have Travelers, Furry Friends, Harmless Old Woman, Primrose Flowers, Fairy Ring, and then 3 that are going to use the special victim meeples, the Woodsman, Hansel, and Pied Piper, and then 2 that are going to use the different tokens. Breadcrumb Path is interesting because basically there are these 3 different locations that are not adjacent. In fact, they're pretty far spread out, but when you use this event, basically you place 2 of these breadcrumb tokens on 2 of those 3 spaces, and whichever 2 you choose, they are effectively adjacent for movement purposes only for you, not for victims or for the killer. These are those tokens meant to represent breadcrumbs. Looks more like rubble to me, but whatever. The other that uses a token is Toll Bridge, which basically lets you place a new bridge anywhere along the river so that it touches 2 spaces to let you go across them, but even though they're now adjacent, like, a bridge, you have to spend 1 time to actually cross and an additional time that the victim follows you. So everybody who walks across is going to have to pay a toll. That is marked on the map by little Toll Bridge token. Then we have 18 item cards. We have 2 of the knife, then map, archery bow, lucky rabbit's foot, candy, bread, cage, songbirds, pitchfork, red cape, slingshot, flowers, and now we're into ones that actually have tokens to go with them. The first one is chicken bones, and basically you have 3 tokens for chicken bones, and you can spend a time to drop them into space, and when the enemy enters that space with the chicken bones, it's like a trap. You discard the token and deal 1 damage to the enemy. So basically like a booby trap or a landmine of chicken bones with your 3 tokens here. Then you have thorny vines, which is similar. You spend a time to place a token of the thorny vines into a space. If the killer enters it, in this case they take 2 damage, but also the killer phase immediately ends. A little more powerful, only 1 instance, and you got the 1 token to tell you where it is. Then an interesting one here, you have the hatchet. Notice its range is 0 with an asterisk. Basically, you would normally just attack in your own space, keep the hatchet. But you could be 1 space away in an adjacent space and throw it, basically. If you choose to do that, that's fine, and the hatchet doesn't just magically disappear or anything, but it's also not in your hands anymore. So there's a token that goes in the space, and if you want to go pick it up again, you can go to that space, even if it's not a regular search space, and discard rather than using a search card to pick it back up again. That's represented by this little hatchet token. Then we have the raft card that I mentioned. As soon as you get this, you're going to place the 4 raft tokens so that each one's touching both a river and a little raft space that is marked on the board that I pointed out earlier. While you're on one of those spaces, you can use 1 movement to move to any of the other spaces with a raft token, but you must spend 1 time for each raft token passed through, including the starting and ending tokens. So pretty nice for moving around the map quickly. The tokens are these little things here. Now I did leave 1 item out initially when showing you the ones that have no tokens because I think this may be our first instance of some type of errata with this series, at least that we've seen so far, noted online. We have the basket. Shuffle the unused item cards, the ones that weren't part of the original 12, and draw 3. Keep the items that are not weapons. Notice it does not say to discard after use. It should, according to the creators. Then finally we have the 8 terror cards, which are Out of the Woods, The Full Moon is Out, Getting Treats for Grandmother, I Was Carried Like a Rag Doll, It Picked Me Up and I Was Helpless, There's Something in the Trees, Have Some Sweets, Once Upon a Time. And again, fairly simple in the sense that it does just have the 1 quick rule sheet here, no fold out. The final feature film of Series 2 is going to be Madness in the Dark by Evan Derrick and AJ Porfirio with art by Vladislava Ladkova. Setting the stage on the back, remain calm at Wolf Asylum. The Ratchet Lady is in a mood. She's performing her own brand of therapy on the victims, turning them into bloodthirsty maniacs. You'll have to decide if you want to try to calm them down or kill them before they can take you out. From the outside, Wolf Asylum appears to be a harmless mental institution. Inside lies something very different, however. There's medicine and other drugs that can, shall we say, amplify your abilities. But at what cost? When the choice is death or a potential side effect, it isn't really a choice at all. Down the hatch! Standard warning, content listing we're going to look at, and standard bottom. And what you have here, of course, is your front, noting the killer is Ratchet Lady. Your spine, the other side, the other spine. This is going to have Ratchet Lady as the killer and the Wolf Asylum location. So we have our Ratchet Lady rule sheet, deceptively small looking for how complex it can be. And then we have the Ratchet Lady killer board here. 2 minor dark power spaces at the top, 5 horror level to start, which is pretty high, and 6 health, but notice it has that little asterisk, because the Ratchet Lady has no upper health value. Usually if something gives the killer back health, it maxes out at whatever his starting health was, but not this one. This one can just keep growing and growing and growing, so looks weak to start with, but can grow very quickly. You'll also notice the symbols here. This is our instance here, kind of like Geppetto back with Series 1, where we actually have a killer with minions operating with it as well. There's your Bloodlust track over there off to the side. So a big part of the Ratchet Lady's gameplay is to create these minions known as maniacs. Basically, regular victims become maniacs, typically, unless they just spawn by themselves. But here we have 6. It is a hard limit of 6. 6 sort of victim meeples here that instead of being yellow or one of those special colors, the orange, blue, or white, they are red like a killer, but they are still the size of the victim meeples. These represent the maniacs. Now, a single maniac here is going to have 1 health, 1 attack, 1 movement. They're not regular victims, so they will not follow you, okay? If a victim becomes a maniac, then you replace it with a maniac meeple, but it's not like the maniac victim died, so you don't increase bloodlust, which is nice. When a maniac is killed, they're not considered a victim anymore when they're wiped out, so they don't raise bloodlust that way either, which is nice. However, they block your movement. Essentially, if you ever try to leave a space that has more than 1 of these, you're going to take 1 health damage for each one beyond the first. So if there's 3, you get nailed for 2 if you try to leave that space with 3, which really kind of sucks. So you got to keep them down, but again, they don't have much health at all. And again, as I said, there is a hard limit of 6 of these, so they may be spread out, they may be clustered, you just got to kind of watch out for them. How they come out and how they can be removed without being killed, we'll see in a moment. Before we get to all the bad shit kind of cards here, let's check out the 2 new final girls. We have Veronica, 5 health. For the rest of the game, you reset the time to 7 at the end of the planning phase, 6 if playing in extreme horror mode, rather than 6 or 5. The additional victim save reward is 3 time, which is nice. That is after unlocking with 5 saves, but notice it's all time related for Veronica here. Very thematic for her. Heather, 5 health. When attacking for each 5 or 6 on your initial horror roll, that is the ones that are normally successes, you may re-roll 1 other die, assuming there are any, add damage to your attack for each success in the final result. Very powerful. For each additional victim saved, receive 1 time. That is unlocked after 6 that are a bit more spread out in what they do. I mentioned the ability to potentially change a maniac back into a regular victim without having to kill them. That is where some new action cards come in. There's our symbol for Ratchet Lady. It's called Calm. Up to 2 maniacs in your space or an adjacent space become victims, so they change back. 1 maniac in your space or an adjacent space becomes a victim, but bloodlust increases. Or essentially the same thing, but also ending the action phase. And if you don't want to do that, there is an or option to raise horror and lose 2 time. It does cost 2 time to purchase from the tableau. Not too bad. Just keep in mind that if you change a maniac back into a victim, that's another maniac meeple that's out there that could come back as a new maniac until it hits that hard cap of 6 again. Then we have her dark powers, the 3 regular, dark injection, manic burst, and blood fear, and then her epic dark power, shield of madness, which is crazy because she can't lose any health if there are any maniacs on the board. Better start cleaning up. Then you have her finale cards. Notice you've got your maniac and killer actions up here. The 3 regular ones that are in the box. Hold her down. It's raining maniacs. Or should I say, it's raining maniacs. Holy shit now. Instead of hallelujah, maybe. Feed the madness. And then in the bonus features box, we have our epic finale, Enter the Madhouse. She then has the typical 16 terror cards. 2 of Blood Jolt, where she's recovering again, she has no maximum. Leave her to me! March of the Maniacs. We are helping! Or we are helping? Something like that. Whispers in the Dark, and then Screams in the Dark. Bloodletting. Let Me Tend Your Wounds, which I can't hear outside of Let Me Be Your Hog from UHF, like, let me tend your wounds. Let me tend your wounds now. Anyway, keep her busy. Join me in the dark places. I don't know, first date. Blood transfusion. Join us or die. Very Sithy. Don't worry, this won't hurt. And then minor dark powers, Insanity Lust and Blood Drive. And notice here that some of these are Maniacs only, some are Ratchet Lady only, some will do things like changing victims into Maniacs, and so on here. So you can see sort of this pattern, and every once in a while there is one that would apply essentially across the board. For the location, we have the Wolf Asylum, which is basically the drug-based location, essentially here. So there's your layout there. Nothing super unusual about the layout itself, at least not from my perspective. There's a lot of really crazy stuff going on with this map. It's just it's not the map itself per se that does it. So here's your setup cards. Notice it's a prescription bottle. Like I said, it's a drug-based one here. And we have Madhouse Face-Off, Padded Rooms, Bingo Night, The Doctor is In, and A Solitary Life. What you'll notice here is that there's a space for the final girl, a space for the killer, numbers for the victims, but notice also these little white symbols for 4 starting locations of pills that you can acquire. There are 10 different pills. They all have this back to them. There are 3 that are pink, 3 that are yellow. You have 3 that are at least listed as blue. They look more purple to me, but they call them blue. And 1 that is wild that could be any of the 3. 4 of them will start on the board. 5 of them will be off the board in a pool. The other will be next to your pill effects card. When you walk over a space with a pill, you can spend 1 time to pick it up. At any point during the action phase, you can pop the pills. If you take just 1, there's no side effect from it. No drug interactions, basically, here. You're keeping your available pills down here, including the one you get at the start of the game. And if you take a yellow by itself, you recover 1 health. A blue by itself, move 1 space. A pink by itself, horror drops by 1. Nice. But as soon as you start combining them, that's when you're going to see some side effects. So you can take 2 of them. Let's say you take a yellow and a blue, you recover all your health. Yellow and pink, you get 5 time. Blue and pink, horror drops by 3, which is amazing. But because you did that, they're interacting for each pill you just took. Now you're drawing 2 side effect cards, which we'll see in a moment. You can also take 1 of each color together. You draw 3 side effect cards, but you get to draw a special new amped card. These are the side effect cards. They kind of went with the pink for the tokens and the pink here that reminds me of Pepto-Bismol, but whatever. Now, 6 of these are normal. You draw it, no effect. Nice flavor text that's different between them, but no effect. However, you can also wind up pulling Paralyzation. Discard all action cards that allow movement, but don't draw any more side effect cards. So if this is the first one to come out, if you use 2 or 3 pills, I guess that's good. Panic Attack. Discard 2 terror cards, so you're losing time here before the finale flips. Don't draw any more side effect cards. And similarly, not drawing any more side effect cards, we have discard 1 random item card if able, and then do not draw any more. That's Brain Fog. So each of those, if it happens, if by the craziest of coincidences you wind up with 2 of those bad ones or 3 of those bad ones back to back, at least it stops them all from coming out. And then reset if it comes out, you shuffle this and all the other side effect cards back into the deck. Now, what's interesting about the amped cards is that they are incredibly powerful, but you've got that issue of being nailed by lots of side effects, and you have to collect 1 of each color first, and you don't know what color they are because they're face down on that white side when they're on the board. So you got to kind of plan to gather them up, kind of like planning to save victims. But here are your amped cards. There's a total of 5 of them. You have Final Girl 2.0. If not already revealed, flip and reveal your ultimate ability, then take a second Final Girl card of your choice and apply its ultimate ability as well. Holy crap. Then Resistance. Ignore all dark power and minor dark power effects. Crazy powerful. Rapid Healing. During the upkeep phase, make a horror roll. For each success, recover 1 health. Rabid Fury. Furious Strike now costs 0 time. You can just keep getting it without having to spend for it. And Extreme Agility. Roll +1 die for all horror rolls. That's insane. So super powerful, but tough to get your hands on. And there is always the side effects that go with it. Thankfully, the side effects are mitigated a little bit. Then you got your event cards here. We have Scratching and Biting, Medical Stockpile, Powerful Meds, the new patients are here, and then we get ones with special victim meeples. We have Dr. Death, Dr. Sunshine, and Hannibal the Cannibal. A little bit on the nose there for Silence of the Lambs and so forth, with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. Then we have Dangerous Addiction, which does use tokens, but it's using the pill tokens, basically. Choose up to 2 victims that don't share a space with you or each other. Place a face-down pill token with both, one or neither of them. For each token you place, Bloodlust increases by 1. So better chance of pulling pills that you could use, but Bloodlust rising in the process. Then using another token, we have Hospital Gurney. Basically, you can travel with it and slam it into enemies, and if you've got victims on it, it adds to the strength of the hit from the weight, but the victims die. That uses a Hospital Gurney token. Then Welcome to the Madhouse, and as is often the case, but not always with that little skull symbol, basically just marks a space, so if anybody enters it, something happens. In this case, when you or an enemy enters that space, you or it is dealt 1 damage, but nothing to the victims. And that uses the familiar skull token. Then we have 18 item cards, 3 of which are mysterious pills, where basically you get it, you discard it, you take 2 pill tokens. The other 15, we have Doctor's Bag, Scalpel, Physician's Manual, First Aid Kit, Trash Can Lid, Energy Drink, Defibrillator, Adrenaline Shot, Anesthesia, Hook-Handled Bone Hammer, Knife, Bone Saw, Laughing Gas Canister, and Tranquilizer Gun, followed by the last one, Patient Gown. And notice that some of these, like Defibrillator, has the stunned keyword. So if you use something that causes stun, the stun can happen to an enemy, and only enemies, by the way. That basically keeps them from moving during the killer phase, though they can still attack in their own space as normal. And as far as removing these, it's pretty simple. You get to the upkeep phase, and any of them that are still there are gone. Then you have the typical 8 terror cards. Where did everyone go? 4 o'clock. Time for bingo. I found some candy. Uh-oh. All hail the new master. Extreme paranoia. Give us our meds. Fueled by madness. What is this place doing to me? And of course, to make sense of all this, you've got your rule sheet right here. Then, just like in the first Kickstarter, there was one vignette. For this one, it was again a stretch goal, as Terror from Above was previously, though it is sold separately now. Presumably this will be sold separately as well. This is Terror from the Grave, from the $446,017 stretch goal, which is when they met and began to exceed the funding of the original Kickstarter campaign. So it says Terror from the Grave, a vignette expansion for Final Girl. If you can't tell here, it's going to be about zombies. Directed by, created by AJ Porfirio, and then art by Tyler Johnson. Nothing on the sides, just UPC on the bottom, nothing on the top. There's the back here. The back reads, "You have never believed it if you weren't at the cemetery when it happened. When the first rotten fist punched through the topsoil, you and the others at the funeral you were attending started looking around for cameras. This must be a prank, you thought. But then more emerged, and the dead were coming out of the ground all around you. When the priest let out a scream, you turned to see your dead uncle biting and pulling him into his own freshly dug grave. At that moment, you realized the dead truly had risen. How will you survive this terror from the grave?" This is a vignette expansion that can be used in combination with any location, one of which is included in each of the Final Girl feature film boxes sold separately. So basically, just like Terror from Above with the birds, these zombies are an enemy type with a lot of game mechanics that use in place of a killer, but does not include a location. It also has cards rather than needing a board, hence being able to fit in the small box here. To learn how to play, you have a pretty detailed little fold-out set of rules here, as opposed to rule cards this time around. So it's going to be set up a little differently. That is why you have this section here of the mat. In this case, the Bloodlust track is 2 cards that go together. And it does notice starting horror. There's also a little zombie holding space down here. So you set up those basically like so. Now you might notice there is nothing on that Bloodlust track that actually activates a dark power. Instead, you do have dark powers, but they have a special space for a horde token to sit on them that we will see in just a moment. There's your symbol there, by the way. No epic dark power, just 3 regular dark powers here. We have Legion, Super Horde, and Runners. So one of them will be sitting right here. And when you eventually get to a point, we'll talk about the placement of zombies in a moment, but when you eventually get to the point of 3 zombies in a single space, at the end of a killer phase, they essentially merge and become a horde. And the first time that happens, you take a horde token off of here to represent them, and you flip the dark power over. These are those tokens, these horde tokens. You'll notice they have symbols at the bottom that match the symbols of those victim holding boards back in the original core box. So the idea is that these represent a horde of 3 or more zombies, because in fact, if they move into a space or a zombie moves into their space, so that there's a lone zombie with a horde, they get essentially like absorbed into the horde. And the horde is going to have a set amount of health equal to the number of zombies that formed it, or that have grown into it, and you're going to keep those health tokens sitting on the victim holding boards using the appropriate symbols here. So for instance, if there's 4 health for the white diamond one, your white diamond zombie horde little victim holding board is going to have 4 health tokens on it. No final health tokens, though. You should bear in mind, though, these are limited. If ever there's going to be a 4th horde forming and the other 3 are already out there, you immediately lose the game. Now, I'll note here that there are going to be zombie miniatures for us to see in a little bit, and so they have these rings included as well that you wouldn't use when not playing with the minis, but basically you stick the mini inside it and this ring still tells you which holding board to look at for the horde's health. As far as the zombies, you have 20 single zombie tokens that all have this symbol on them and the set symbol on the back. As for the zombies, they start out the game with 1 on the killer starting space and 1 on each exit space. If there's only 1 exit space, you put an extra one on the starting killer space and 1 on any search space of your choice. Then as we'll see, there is a spawning symbol, and that uses this extra line here on the Bloodlust track to tell you how many zombies will spawn. They spawn on the exit space with the least number of zombies in it, and if multiple are tied, you start with the farthest one from you. You notice, by the way, that the movement of the zombies is pretty slow. You have 1 or 2 at most for the movement of the zombies themselves. So basically what happens is they target like normal, they move like normal, except if they're not going to be able to actually reach their target, instead they panic instead. So it's like they're looking for a target, they can't reach them, they're like, ah, freak out brains or whatever, and they just kind of move a space in a random direction instead. I should also note that they only move once during the killer phase, during the minion action portion of that. They ignore all of the movement symbols on terror cards. They are crazy slow. They mass quickly, but they're crazy slow. While we're on that subject, let's check out the finales. Notice here on the back, there's a minion action. This is basically what the individual zombies do, and then there's your killer action, which is what the hordes do. Okay? And there's that symbol there that's going to cause spawning. So no epic this time, just regular finales. Their numbers are endless. I'm overwhelmed, and they've all been bitten. I'd also note, and I didn't think to mention this a moment ago when we were talking about those victim holding boards to tell you what the health is for the hordes, there are also multiplier tokens for those. There's 3 of them, 1 for each board, that has either a ×2 or on the other side a ×5 in case you need to use a multiplier to track it. There's some big hordes. You have 16 terror cards, 5 of which are They Just Keep Coming that causes spawns. You have 2 copies of They're Coming to Get You. 2 of There's No More Room in Hell. 2 of Don't Forget Double Tap. Then 2 of I'm the Meat in a Zombie Sandwich. Then 1 of I'm Surrounded. There's Dead People Everywhere. and a minor dark power that's interesting here, where if a victim would panic, instead move it toward the closest enemy. When 3 zombies or 1 horde have been killed and placed on this card down here, remove it from the game. So not a health thing, but an activity that gets cut off here. And I would note, by the way, that if a victim gets killed, the bloodlust rises as normal, but that victim becomes a zombie and gets replaced by a zombie token. So that minor dark power could draw them in and cause the horde to grow faster. Or at least the zombies and then their hordes to grow faster. So one of the other interesting things about this one is this use of vehicles. You have 4 vehicle tokens, 3 of which are X's, 1 of which shows basically a steering wheel. Right? And the idea here is that these will be on the exit spaces, if there's enough exit spaces for them. If there's an odd number of them, then the extra one goes in the space farthest from you. If there's only 1 exit space, like with the station there in the Arctic or wherever it's supposed to be, then you would basically place 1 there and the other's just somewhere that thematically vehicles could reside. And the vehicles don't work like normal. So if you were to draw a vehicle from a location, you would just kind of ignore that. You would just replace it with an item card from elsewhere, like the ones that are outside of the game to start with. If you go into a space that has one of those vehicle tokens and you immediately flip it as you enter and it turns out that it's not one of the X's, it's that steering wheel symbol, you get to have the vehicle present in the game now. And which vehicle it is depends on the location, but rather than using their normal abilities, because as I said, you're not using the regular item cards, you get special vehicle actions just for this vignette. So if you're in Wolf Asylum, you can get the gurney. It moves with you anywhere on the board. There's 2 copies of that action card for a cost of 2. You notice, by the way, it's blue, so it is a reaction card. If you're playing Storybook Woods, you've got the raft. And there are 2 of these as well for a cost of 2. Basically, you take the 4 tokens for the rafts, you put them onto the map. At least one of them must be on the raft space closest to the exit where you found the raft. And you can't skip around. You must move from one raft space to the next. And victims won't go with you on the raft. But you have 2 of these. And notice there's some killing zombies involved there as well. At Wingard Cottage, you've got the scooter. 2 copies of that. Costs 1 each. Then 1 copy of the ski dozer for a cost of 2. This is when you're at station 2891. Basically, you also have the ability to burst that hole in the side of the lab if you like, assuming there are no zombies present. For the USS Conrad, you got the super loader available here, cost of 2. Cool stuff that can happen here, but it can't move through the maintenance shafts, mind you. It says it up there at the top. You got the police car for Maple Lane. It only drives in the streets. And notice it has this symbol here. It's a cost 3 card, but as this symbol here, it has a driver. So you don't have to be in its space to actually use it. You can use this and it moves on its own because the driver, probably officer cop, is in the car. For the Carnival of Blood, you've got the golf cart, which now pretty much moves freely. The victims will follow you but can't actually drive the cart, but there's normal restrictions that are gone in that case. Cost of 3. The Sacred Groves, which doesn't normally have a vehicle per se, has cable cars that are going to let you move directly from one exit space to another without needing to roll. Cost of 2. For Creech Manor, you've got the helicopter. Notice the symbol again. It does have its own pilot. You don't have to be on the space to be able to use it. Cost of 3. It does only move in outdoor spaces, though. And then for Camp Happy Trails, you've got the motorboat, which you can take to the center of the lake to use these abilities here. Cost of 2. And then finally, as with Terror from Above, we have one new final girl with this one who is trying to win the game by killing all the zombies. Yes, the goal is every single zombie must die, and that is Patsy. Health of 6. Once per action phase, you may spend 2 time to deal damage, 1 damage, to an enemy in your space. The killer cannot lose its final health as a result of this effect. For each additional victim saved, move 1 space. That's after unlocking with 5. So that's all the feature films and the vignette. But there's still more to talk about in terms of some extras. Since we just finished talking about Terror from the Grave, let's check out the zombie miniatures. These were a free stretch goal at the $1.5 million mark. Similar to the Terror from Above bird miniatures. Nothing on top or bottom except for the legalese type stuff on the bottom there, nothing on the sides. Note there, it says it contains 15 single zombie miniatures and 3 zombie horde miniatures. That is different than the tokens. Remember, it's 3 horde tokens and 20 single zombies. It's only 15 for the minis. As with the others, they come in a nice little case here with a snap-on lid, but you're actually expected to store them in the cast crew box, along with the actual vignette itself. So there's your zombies. We'll look at them, and you'd have your various tokens and whatnot tossed in there as well, or put somewhere out of the way, at least the ones you won't need. For these, you'll have 15 of this model here, and 3 horde minis. And again, that's that round base that you wind up putting the thing around, and of course, names on the bottom. Of course, you'll notice here, the big thing that you're storing at the top of the box here are the Final Girls. The storage box comes with the cast crew box, so you have a place here for your Final Girl cards, including sleeved. For the special things that we're going to see in those secret envelopes, we know they're items, just a question of what they are. We will be looking at them at the end. That's why I didn't cover them with the feature film boxes here. And then, of course, your vignette stuff. But you have all your Final Girls in a nice little container here when you store them after purchasing them separately. And it does tell you which ones go where. There's a guide to what goes inside the package here. If you buy the Series 2 minis, they come in a box like this, similar to Series 1, $20. 22 miniatures included. These are the Final Girls and the Killers. It says Final Girls, Series 2 miniatures, 22 high-quality miniatures to enhance your Final Girl experience. Final Girl on the sides, nothing on the top. Legalese and UPC stuff there on the bottom. And the back includes miniatures for the following feature films and vignette. And it has the 5 films plus a vignette for Series 2. Or at least it sort of does. Notice here, it's not actually the names of the films, it's the names of the locations, but whatever. We'll look at the Killers in a moment, but let's start with the Final Girls. So as with Series 1, you get Final Girl miniatures in that pack for all the Final Girls in the feature films, plus the one in the vignette, but not any promos. Now, in Series 1, that wasn't a big deal because the Paula promo wasn't out at the time of the Series 1 Kickstarter. That came later. But they did draw that distinction heading into Series 2, saying that, yes, we'd have those 4 promo Final Girls as well, along with Paula to make a total of 5. None of them would wind up getting minis, because the minis take more time to go into production, and the idea of the promos is to make them kind of a quick thing that they can add from time to time. They didn't want to set a precedent of needing minis for all the promo Final Girls. So from Madness in the Dark, we have Veronica with a tranquilizer gun in her hand. We have Heather with a bone saw in her hand. From Panic at Station 2891, we have Kate with a flamethrower in her hand. We also have Yuki, who actually has a dog with her, her Alaskan Malamute named Gus. From Once Upon a Full Moon, we have Red, the hood, of course, with a crossbow, and Gretel with a knife. From Into the Void, we have Jeanette with a scanner, and we have Ellen, like Kate, with a flamethrower. From A Knock at the Door, we have Jenny with a sawed-off shotgun, then Ava with Porcupine, which is like a trash can lid with spikes in it, plus a nail bat. Then from Terror from the Grave, we have Patsy with looks like a double-barrel shotgun here. You then have your killer miniatures. And from Madness in the Dark, that gives us Ratchet Lady, very Silent Hill-esque. From Once Upon a Full Moon, you have the Big Bad Wolf, though he is noted as Werewolf here. Notice he's got arrows already sticking through him. Pretty cool. Then remember, in Panic at Station 2891, you got that situation where there could be up to 3 different mutated organisms running around out there with slightly different profiles. So we have the tough one, the fast one, I'll say tough, fast, or whatever on the bottom, and the strong one. So 3 different killer minis just for that one. Then similarly, from Three's Company, also known as A Knock at the Door, you've got Trish, then Baghead, and Zeke. From Into the Void, we have 3 more again with the Hatchling, the Youngling, and the Adult. Then speaking of miniatures, as with Series 1 introduced in this Kickstarter, there's a Series 2 vehicle miniature pack. That includes a total of 6 minis here. The pack was $10, and of course you've got a space here in one of those nice little trays to hold it if you're not going to stick them inside your feature film boxes, which is where they're meant to go, just like the Killer Minis. Since we've already seen the individual tokens and how they work because we just looked at the Series 2 feature films, I don't feel like we need to go through and see the tokens again. But from Into the Void, we have the Super Loader. Very nice looking here. From Wingard Cottage, you got the little kick scooter here from A Knock at the Door. You got 2 from Panic at Station 2891. You have the Arctic Helicopter and the Ski Dozer. From Once Upon a Full Moon, you've got the Raft. Interesting that it's only 1, though, so it's not replacing the tokens. Maybe it just goes under your mini as you move along the river. Then from Madness in the Dark, it's the Gurney. Now the box is empty. You can see on the inside, just like last time, it's printed to show you what goes where, assuming you're using the box of props and not a core box, but of course you would just swap that in. To have that guide slip that we saw earlier on the back of that cover art slip that would be inside the shrink wrap, and to have this interior stuff laid out here as a guide was the $1,600,000 stretch goal. Now I'm just sticking this up here so I can say some things real quick and at least have a visual to go with it. Before we get into the spoiler territory when it comes to the secret envelopes and the mystery box, a couple of other stretch goals to note here, but they were digital only. And in fact, one of them was actually released. I'm recording this in 2 separate segments over 2 separate nights, and in the interim between the 2 nights, they actually released one of these. That is the Make Your Own Item Tool, which was a stretch goal at the $1.1 million mark, which goes along with the Make Your Own Final Girl tool from the first campaign. There's also a digital soundtrack available on Fabler, and Fabler is a paid subscription service. It's done by the same people that do Foreteller, but it is a paid service, but those who were backers could get 2 free months to basically access it and try out the music. That was at the $1.8 million stretch goal mark. I will say with that music, some of it is very thematic, very cool. You sort of play it in the background. Some of it is incredibly, incredibly generic. I'm not sure that I'm the type of person who would ever pay for a subscription service to listen to background music that's kind of generic, yet somewhat thematic, very like computer-generated feeling for a board game. But for those who are into that sort of thing, Fabler might be for you, and this is a way to get 2 free months and get access to some music specifically curated or composed for Final Girl. So what you've seen here so far is everything from Wave 2, with the exception of the spoilerific stuff, which is the secret envelopes. There are 2 of those per feature film box, 1 per Final Girl in those boxes, but not for the vignette Final Girl or the promo ones, and the mystery box. If you don't want those spoiled for you, stop watching now. I hope this has been very helpful to you as you're checking out or looking into Final Girl Series 2. From here on, we are diving into spoiler territory. You've been warned. Okay, if you're still with me, every single one of the feature film boxes underneath the tray on either side will have one of these secret envelopes. They contain a special item card that is specific to that particular Final Girl. So there's 1 per Final Girl, but only for the feature film boxes, as I mentioned. As I mentioned also before, the original versions from Series 1, from the original Kickstarter, do not say anything about how to use them, whereas the ones for the reprint for Series 1 stuff in the second Kickstarter and all the Series 2 stuff actually tell you that you should wait until you've won a game with that Final Girl before opening it up and using what is inside. Each envelope includes 1 item card and a little instruction sheet. The instruction sheets always work the same way, that the name of the item, a picture of the Final Girl, and a note that the item can only be used when that Final Girl is chosen as the Final Girl. Then on the back, it's going to tell you that to incorporate whatever that item is into the game, you shuffle it into the chosen locations deck of item cards before setup, when you pull your typical 12 item cards. If you'd rather ensure that it's present in your game, deal out the appropriate number of item cards -1, shuffle it into that deck to make sure it's there, and then deal out your item deck. So for example, the setup called for 3 item decks of 4 cards, which is typical. You deal out 11 cards, shuffle this special card into it, then deal out the 3 item decks as normal. That's the case for all of these. But just to show you what these look like, we have Ginny's sawed-off shotgun, Ava's bat and porcupine, Veronica's tranquilizer gun, Heather's bone saw, Gretel's knife, Red's crossbow, Yuki's Malamute Gus, Kate's flamethrower, Ellen's flamethrower, and Jeanette's scanner. Again, you're expected to store the actual item cards in their particular series, cast crew box, and the little space there next to the final girls. Just to go through them here, we have Ava's nail bat and porcupine, Jenny's sawed-off shotgun. You see the text here as we go across. They're basically just sort of tweaked versions of stuff that already exists in the game in some form most of the time. Ellen's flamethrower, Jeanette's scanner, Gretel's knife, Red's crossbow, lots of uses there. Yuki's Alaskan Malamute Gus, if you're wondering how I knew the name of the dog. Kate's flamethrower, Heather's bone saw, Veronica's tranquilizer gun, and then we're back to the beginning. And notice that every single one of them says that only that particular final girl can use that particular item. So a nice little bonus thing here that if you're following the new rules, you get after winning one game with that final girl, and then you can use it anytime you play with that final girl. Having these at all, by the way, was a $225,000 stretch goal, which brought these feature films into line with what we saw in Series 1. Finally, we've got the Mystery Box. This was a $10 add-on for the game, and it operates similarly to the Mystery Box from Series 1. We're not going to show that here. I've showed that in a previous video, back in the first video of these three. We're just going to focus on the one here for Series 2. So, danger, proceed with caution. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Legalese and UPC. Nothing on the back. Very mysterious. Inside, you find this weird thing that looks kind of like a mirror. There's a couple things to note about this. It's going to swivel open, and here you have a pair of dice, just like what we saw back with Series 1. More about these in a second. What is easy to miss, however, is that you can also slide out the mirror, and inside is a coin. There's a picture of the Evomorph, it says Series 2, or Hans, it says Series 1. How you'd actually use it is explained on this little tiny slip here. It says, Mystery Box Rule Sheet. Do you dare look into the otherworldly mirror? Do so with caution, as you may be frightened by what you see. Inside the mirror, you will find 2 Series 2 bone dice. One die has each of the Series 2 killer symbols on it, and the other die has each of the location symbols on it, along with a question mark. Of course, the question mark being because, thanks to the zombies in Terror from the Grave, you have 6 killers, but only 5 locations, just like in Series 1. Roll the dice to have the mirror decide which Series 2 killer/location combination you should play. If you get the question mark, re-roll both dice. If you get it a second time, only re-roll the location die. Behind the mirror, slide it out, you'll find a special metal coin. Each side of the coin represents either Series 1 or Series 2 as indicated. If you also own the Necronomicon Series 1 mystery box, before rolling the bone dice to determine a random killer and/or location, you may flip the coin to see which die or dice you should use. Then, assuming you're looking at Series 2, there's your key here that is on the back. So again, just these nice bone dice with all the symbols on them to let you properly, truly randomize. I would note there is a stretch goal related to this. The $1.7 million stretch goal was some type of mystery upgrade to this, but they never said what it was. I'm assuming it might be the coin, maybe it's the sliding mirror, who knows? Probably the coin. Now before we go, very briefly here, as I mentioned previously, I recorded this over what I thought was going to be just 2 nights. Then it turned out that I actually had a couple of items that needed to be replaced. One was an incorrect card that needed to be replaced by the correct one. One was a crumpled set of instructions for the mystery box that needed to be replaced by one that wasn't crumpled. In the time waiting for those to come in, it turns out that they did finally put all the items from this wave, except the mystery box, which is Kickstarter exclusive, up on the Ryder Games website for pre-order. So I can, as we're heading out here, give you an indication of what these prices are going to be retail through the VRG site. Remember again, there are 3 configurations of this. This is the Series 2 booster box configuration. You have the game mats inside their box, you have all 5 of the feature films, the cast crew box that is empty to put stuff in, the bonus features box with your epic finales, and the combined rulebook in there, and then over in this slot you have your box of props. On the other hand, this would be your Series 2 franchise box configuration. No box of props, but you've got a core box in here. Both of those configurations are available through the VRG website for $179.99. This configuration, on the other hand, would just be the storage box, and that is $29.99. It comes with an empty box to put your mats in without any mats, the empty cast crew box, and then the bonus features, which does include the epic finales and the combined rulebook. But otherwise, it's empty. You'll see a big styrofoam block sitting in here if you order it this way. $29.99 would also get you either the game mat set here or the box of props with all those extra goodies in it. $24.99 will get you the Final Girl and Killer miniature pack for Series 2. $19.99 will get you any of the individual feature film boxes or either of the sets of vignette minis, which again were stretch goals in the main campaign but now are paid add-ons. $9.99 would get you either the Series 1 vehicle miniatures, Series 2 vehicle miniatures, the Terror from the Grave vignette, which yes was a stretch goal during the campaign for backers but is now a paid item, or the bonus features box, which again comes with your epic finales and the combined rulebook for Series 2. Again, that is included inside any of the 3 box configurations for the storage box, but could be purchased separately if you just don't want the storage box for whatever reason. And finally, the Series 2 lore and scenario book, which gets stored in the bonus features box but does not come inside it, is now a paid item, whereas it was, again, a free stretch goal within the campaign. It is a paid item on the VRG website for $7.99. So there you have it, folks. That is all the content from Wave 2 of the material from the second Final Girl Kickstarter. Again, you can see the stuff from the first Kickstarter in the first video, and Wave 1 material from the second Kickstarter in the second video. This is the third of 3. I expect more of these when we see Series 3. Who knows if that'll have multiple waves, but it probably will. For now, I hope this has been useful to you if you're trying to consider what to get, if anything, for Final Girl Series 2. Maybe some of those little extras from Series 1 that were part of Wave 2, like the miniatures and whatnot. Either way, if you stuck with me this long, hopefully that means you have a strong passion for this game, and you're really wanting to get into the different feature films, and hopefully this will help you make a decision on which ones to get, if not all of them. Thanks for watching, and have fun playing Final Girl. And dying. A lot.